Report, 90%. Chapter 106. Secret Story, The Void True God Attacks. Jin Feng needs rare treasures now, and it happens that in this ancient battlefield, there are dangers everywhere, and there are quite precious treasures of heaven and earth that can be picked. And most of the people who came to hunt Jin Feng were very powerful and possessed countless treasures. Anyway, Jin Feng had to wait for the evolution of Tian Hongchang's nest, so he simply stayed in this ancient battlefield, waiting for the strong men who came to hunt and kill. Ancient battlefield. Yellow sand filled the sky. A bunch of teams made up of the venerable looked into the sky, and one of them couldn't help complaining. It's been 100 years, so there's still no news from Jinfeng. A cold woman in the team said, "It's only been 100 years. This ancient battlefield is so big. In 100 years, you can't even find a corner. Besides, Jinfeng won't stay in one place for too long." A giant beast nodded and said, "That's right, that Jinfeng should really run away, and now trillions of lives come to the ancient battlefield every day to find the whereabouts of that Jinfeng, ha ha ha. Even the real 24 gods are dispatched quite a lot." A bald man sneered and said, "True God. I heard that the 3 void true gods in God Emperor City have already made their move and rushed to the ancient battlefield to hunt down Jin Feng." Everyone couldn't help being curious, shaking their heads and calling it impossible. No matter how powerful Jin Feng is, he's just a little immortal. It's already unbelievable that he can make a move from a true god powerhouse. How could it be possible that the 3 true void gods will also attack? It is said that Jin Feng's strength is extraordinary, and his talent is very monstrous. He can kill the venerable Wushou Heaven and Insect King in the immortal period, as for the true god, or even the true void god. I guess he wants to catch Jin Feng quickly. Someone immediately sneered, with a mysterious look, said, "What do you know, those 3 true void gods, but..." Speaking of which, seeing that everyone's attention was attracted, he said unhurriedly, "The 3 true gods of the void, compared to you, you also know the identities of those 3, that is, the 3 major families in the city jointly established the power estimates the 3 priests of the Repair Society, Tongtai Ju, Tianzun Shouyu, and Taoist Mu Xin. We all know this, everyone in God Emperor City knows, what exactly are you trying to say?" Someone pouted dissatisfiedly. The man coughed dryly, and then said, "These 3 priests heard that the second son of the Zuo family was humiliated, so they became concerned, and wanted to please the eternal true god of the Zuo family, so they rushed to the ancient battlefield, intending to kill the Jinfeng, take it back and show it to second young master." Everyone was a little puzzled, and someone directly asked, "How respectful is the status of the true god of void?" Even facing Uncle Zuo Qing's father, the eternal god, one needs to be cautious and respectful, but Uncle Zuo Qing is only a respectable person. How about the true god of the void bowing his head? The man looked disdainful, and snorted coldly, "Don't you understand? Originally, these 3 priests didn't need to bow their heads when facing young Master Zuo, just treat them equally. But a big event is going to happen recently, that made them panic, guess what it is?" After everyone waited a little anxiously, the man answered with a smile, "The eternal true god of the Zuo family, that is, the father of young Master Zuo, the Shen Kashui, is going back to the God Emperor City soon. Will the eternal god come? This is big news, even for the void god. The gods and dragons can't see the head and tail on weekdays, and it's not the little venerables like them who can see one side. The eternal true god, who is so lofty and incomparably high, actually wants to come down to the city minister of the God Emperor." Immediately, someone realized, so, these 3 priests are not trying to curry favor with Uncle Zuoken, but just showing off to Lord Kashushin. Everyone nodded in conviction. During their conversation, the yellow sand in the sky suddenly fell silent. The violent wind that had been whistling in the ancient battlefield also came to an abrupt end. The air suddenly became as thick as steel, and these venerables felt extremely difficult even to breathe. They were all shocked and kept looking around, but they didn't see a single person. In the sky, a sneer suddenly came out. "Jin Feng, after eavesdropping for so long, it's time to show up." The voice was mighty, like rolling thunder, spreading throughout the world. Accompanied by the sound, a figure suddenly appeared in the sky. A white-faced, beardless, young man, holding a long sword. An enchanting and charming woman, wearing a light veil, looks like a 9-day goddess. A thick and tall man with heavy armor and a long halberd on his shoulder. As soon as these 3 people showed up, the team who had been talking about it just now changed their expressions immediately, and some people even jumped out in amazement. Taoist Mu Xin, Great Lord Shou Yu, and Ji Yu Tai Ju. How did the 3 of them appear here? No, he just said Jin Feng. Could it be that Jin Feng is here? In the astonished eyes of everyone, an ordinary-looking stone beside them twisted suddenly, and in an instant it turned into a figure. It was Jin Feng, who had been disguised for a long time. Jin Feng ignored the astonished eyes of the team, and flew into the air, and flew to the same level as the three people, and then laughed loudly. The three void gods came to arrest me together, so I really think highly of Jin. However, I didn't eavesdrop on their conversations. I have turned 217 into a stone here and comprehended the laws of heaven and earth for 10 years. It was they who wanted to come over and let me overhear these conversations. If you want to talk about it, it's because the three great powers are hiding in the sky that they appear timid, right? What Jin Feng said immediately annoyed Taoist Mu Xin, and he sneered and said, Jin Feng, right. His words are quite sharp, but that's all. You offended the second young master of the Zuo family, so I will you take it away, bring it into custody in front of Uncle Zuo Cheng, and let him punish you. Jin Feng shrugged his shoulders. At first, I thought that the three void gods were ignorant of worldly affairs, aloof, and very aloof, but I didn't expect that they would be treated like dogs to the children of the aristocratic family, and being shouted and shouted by a kid in the venerable realm really made people laugh out loud. Quote. When the three of them heard this, there was a trace of embarrassment on their faces. Their status, however, does not require respect for Zuo Qingbo Na and other aristocratic disciples. But when his father Kashui Shen came back, his status was different. They are the true gods of the void, and they are dismissive of the so-called power and resources. What they hope and ask for are only the rare treasures that the eternal true God powerhouse can produce. Therefore, they tried their best to please the Zuo family, just to be rewarded with some treasures. Report. 90%. Chapter 107. Sword of Nirvana. Great Zhou Dynasty, Royal Gardens. The sky is covered by forests and bamboos, overgrown with weeds and degraded dead leaves. In a desolate place, there is a young man with a thin figure and thin clothes, sitting cross-legged under a dead tree, meditating and practicing. After a long time, the young man suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were full of unwillingness and resentment, and suddenly he punched the dead tree beside him. There was a bang, and the dead tree was not damaged at all, but the boy's hand was torn apart, and fresh red blood flowed out. The severe pain stimulated the boy's brain, and he felt more and more unwilling. He understood that a person with a broken dantian, although not a disabled person, was no different from a disabled person. He was exiled here, and he has been in this abandoned royal garden for 5 years, cultivating hard day and night, but because of the broken dantian, he has not even touched the threshold of cultivation so far. And a person with intact dantian and extremely poor talent can touch the threshold of cultivation within a month. Mother, can this be the only way I can do this all my life? Don't you protect me in the dark. The boy's name is Suzy, and he was once the most glorious prince of the great Zhou dynasty. In front of Suzy, there is a half-person high earthen grave, no one pays homage to it, and there is no stele erected. This is the tomb of Suzy's birth mother, Qinji, who is also the queen of the great Zhou dynasty. Mother, the great Zhou dynasty respects martial arts. If I can't strengthen myself, how can I rehabilitate you? Suzy muttered to himself, hating himself for being useless. 5 years ago, Suzy was still the eldest prince, and Suzy's biological mother, Qinji, was the empress of the great Zhou dynasty and was admired by thousands of people. However, concubine Xiao Gui secretly destroyed the tombs and tablets of the successive kings of the great Zhou dynasty in order to obtain the throne, and blamed it on Qinji. Such things are disrespectful to the predecessors and a crime of rebellion against the 9 clans. After the news spread, the direction of the court changed drastically, and no one paid attention to the authenticity of this matter, instead talking about Qinji's background. Qinji was born in the enemy country of the great Zhou dynasty, the moon-worshipping dynasty, so countless people thought that Qinji's move was to vent her personal anger on behalf of the soldiers who died in the battle of the moon-worshipping dynasty. Concubine Xiao consorted with all the courtiers to plead with the king to punish Qinji, and finally made the king waver because of the sentence, "If you are not of my race, your heart must be different," put Qinji to death in public. Because half of the enemy's blood flowed in Suzy's body, after Qinji was executed, he was banished by the lord to this former royal garden that had long been deserted, and he was not allowed to leave for life. Suzy, why are you still kneeling here? Suddenly, a young man in fine clothes, surrounded by many guards, entered the garden and walked straight towards Suzy. What are you doing here? Suzy stood up, forcibly held back all the anger, and cast a displeased glance at him. Suzy 5 years ago was once the #1 genius of the great Zhou dynasty, the #1 person among the younger generation. With Qinji executed, Suzy was exiled, but he still has a chance to rise up for revenge. However, concubine Xiao's son Zhou Cheng secretly dispatched master guards to try to get rid of Suzy in the royal garden. Suzy resisted desperately. Although he survived by chance, half of his dantian was shattered. 5 years later, not only did his cultivation not improve at all, but he regressed a little and became an ordinary person. He will never be able to become a cultivator again in this life. It is precisely because of this that concubine Xiao is willing to let Suzy die. It seems that you don't know what happened recently, too. After all, no one dares to approach you in the Great Zhou dynasty. You are trapped in this desolate place, and it is normal for you to have no news. The corners of Zhou Cheng's mouth rose slightly, revealing a victorious smile. After 3 months, it will be my mother concubine Xiao's conferment ceremony. When my mother ascends to the queen's position, it won't be long before I will be the prince of the Great Zhou dynasty, and I will be able to rule the Great Zhou dynasty in the future. Hearing this, Suzy could only feel a huge mouthful of anger in his chest, which might crush his chest at any time, but he still held back, clenched his fists and his eyes were red. Concubine Xiao Gui has carefully planned for so long, and she has been waiting for this day, and now her goal has finally been achieved. Don't you have anything to say? Zhou Cheng is aggressive. The more Suzy is like this, the more satisfied he feels in his heart. A sense of superiority and the pleasure of playing with others arise spontaneously. What does it have to do with me? If the second prince has nothing to do, please leave. Suzy said coldly. Besides, there is one more thing. When my mother ascends to the empress position, I need to choose a place to build an altar. I think this place is good. The most important thing is that you can also keep your mother, an enemy spy, underground forever, so that you can't stand up. Seeing his ferocious face, furious, but helpless, Zhou Cheng looked up to the sky and laughed. Suzy, I know you are not reconciled, so for the past 5 years, you have worked hard day and night, but I came here today to cut off your last chance. Come here, abolish his dantian for me. Following Zhou Cheng's order, several guards stepped forward to support Suzy, while the other drew his sword out of its sheath and pierced Suzy's abdomen mercilessly. After finishing all this, Zhou Cheng took his guards and left swaggeringly. Poof! When Zhou Cheng left, Suzy spat out a mouthful of blood, his body went limp, and he fell to the ground, covering his bleeding abdomen with both hands. Gradually, despair filled the whole body. He obviously still has strength, but he feels powerless, unable to do anything to anyone, anything, or anything. Without a prominent status and great strength, he is nothing now. Even the court ladies and eunuchs in the Great Zhou dynasty thought that they could despise him and even tease him. In such a situation, how can we discuss revenge for our mother? He felt that his vitality was passing away bit by bit. Boom! Suddenly, there was a thunderstorm on a sunny day, and a thick bolt of lightning fell from the sky and fell into the royal garden. Suzy was so frightened that he staggered and got up from the ground, only to see that the place hit by lightning Mamahao was dusty and thunder flashed. With strong curiosity, Suzy approached step by step vigilantly, and finally found that what was hit was a towering giant tree. The giant tree that could only be hugged by 3 grown men suddenly collapsed. Suzy squinted his eyes slightly, and always felt that there seemed to be something glowing in the trunk. After walking in, he suddenly found a glowing ancient book and a sword floating in the trunk. Mother, are you guiding me? Suzy immediately reached out to grab it, but the ancient book turned into a stream of light, followed Suzy's fingertips, and entered his body. In an instant, a complex and profound text appeared in Suzy's mind. Sword of Nirvana, Suzy muttered to himself, and learned the name of this ancient book from the words in his mind. It is the Nirvana sword art of the first king. Suzy was so ecstatic that even his voice was trembling with excitement. Report, 90%. Chapter 108. Since I want to leave, who dares to stop me? The first ruler of the country once wiped out all the wastelands with one sword and established the Great Zhou dynasty. At that time, the Great Zhou dynasty was the most powerful dynasty on the Jinyuan continent, and no foreign enemy dared to invade. And the Nirvana sword Ju practiced by the first ruler of the country is known as the strongest exercise in the world, and he himself is the strongest in the world. It is rumored that this exercise is the ultimate in cultivation, can open the sky with a single sword, and can kill immortals. It's a pity that the first ruler of the country mysteriously disappeared after passing on the position of ruler to his descendants. Some people say that he ascended to the fairy world, while others say that he turned into a mortal and traveled the mountains and rivers. Suzy vaguely remembered that this abandoned royal garden seemed to be built by the order of the first king. Perhaps, this Nirvana sword art and Nirvana sword is hidden here by him. Suzy immediately sat cross-legged, trying to comprehend the Nirvana sword art. Unknowingly, Suzy entered into a trance state. Even he didn't know it, he was crazily devouring the aura of heaven and earth near the garden with every breath. Normal cultivators need to use the dantian as a medium to absorb the aura of heaven and earth, and then transform it for their own use. As for Suzy, only half of his dantian was left, and Zhou Cheng sent people to destroy all of them. It was such a person without dantian, whose breathing speed was terrifyingly fast. Not only that, but the sword wound on his abdomen was quickly healed by the majestic qi in his body. After a long time, Suzy opened his eyes suddenly, bursting out, and every inch of muscle in his body was full of strength. Suzy laughed wildly when he suddenly realized that practicing the Nirvana sword art requires a majestic aura as support, and the dantian of an ordinary monk cannot satisfy it at all. So there is only one way, self-destruction of the dantian, using a unique cultivation method to treat the whole body as the dantian. Outsiders all know that the Nirvana sword art is powerful, but they don't know how crazy it is to practice the Nirvana sword art. Even if this set of exercises is handed down, not many people will take such a big risk to practice. Coincidentally, Suzy happens to be a person whose dantian has been destroyed, which is completely suitable for the practice requirements of Nirvana sword art. Thump. Suzy immediately knelt on the ground, kowtowed 3 times to the tomb of the first king's clothes, and then took out the Nirvana sword. The surface of the Nirvana sword is dull, and at first glance it is unremarkable, no different from the saber of an ordinary guard. But Suzy knew in his heart that this was the Nirvana sword that the first ruler of the country personally built to practice the Nirvana sword art, and it would definitely not be as ordinary as it seems. The secrets in the sword still need to be slowly discovered by oneself. Embarking on the road of cultivation again, Suzy is very excited, but not reckless. He settled down and practiced in the deserted garden for another 5 days, until the realm broke through and entered the foundation establishment realm. Cultivation is divided into multiple realms such as refining qi, building foundations, calming the mind, wandering in the void, sitting and forgetting, and dragon bridge. The higher you go, the harder it is to break through the realm. And Suzy was originally a peak foundation builder, but later his dantian was shattered and his cultivation base was completely abolished. Now with the help of the Nirvana sword art, he just walked the previous path again, and he cultivated naturally and quickly. However, just practicing for 5 days is equivalent to ordinary people practicing for several years, or even longer, which shows the heaven-defying nature of the Nirvana sword art. Suzy knelt on the ground again, first kowtowed to the first king, and then kowtowed to her mother's grave. After doing all this, Suzy held his head high and held his chest high, one person with one sword, his eyes bright and high-spirited, like a fierce tiger that had been dormant for 5 years, suddenly woke up, and his momentum changed greatly. Mother, I will make them repay the injustice and all the grievances you and I suffered 5 years ago. This is my oath, Suzy. Suzy gritted his teeth and swore, then strode out of the garden. This royal garden has been abandoned, but Suzy was exiled here, so guards have been guarding the entrance of the garden and Suzy is not allowed to leave. When the 2 guards at the door saw Suzy coming out, they immediately drew their swords and crossed to block the way. There is an order, you can never step out of the garden half a step in your life. Quote. Said a guard. Another guard smiled, then took over the conversation and said, after 5 years in this desolate and lonely abandoned garden, you must be tired of it. It's not impossible for you to go out CEBJ for a breath of fresh air. You give we brothers kneel down and kowtow. Hee, you have a good idea. Our brothers have always kowtowed to those big men. I really want this eldest prince to kneel and kowtow to us. The 2 guards laughed loudly as they spoke, not paying attention to Suzy at all. Are you tired of letting the princes of the great Zhou dynasty kneel down for you? Suzy clenched the Nirvana sword in his hand, with killing intent in his eyes. During the 5 years in exile and imprisonment, the 2 of them obeyed Zhou Cheng's orders and often tortured and teased him on weekdays. Suzy has always remembered this grudge. Suzy, it's been 5 years, haven't you recognized the reality yet? What kind of prince are you? You are a useless person now, even if you die in the garden, no one will bother you. If you don't kneel, our brother will beat you until you kneel. The 2 guards were aggressive. As soon as the words fell, one of the guards really hit Sushi's knee with his scabbard. Suzy smiled coldly, and quickly drew his sword. A gray sword light flashed. The guard didn't even see it clearly, and my arm with the scabbard was cut off. Since I have decided to go, who dares to stop me? Suzy snorted coldly. If you step out of the garden today, you will be disobeying the decree, and disobeying the decree is a death penalty. The 2 guards panicked. They never expected that Suzy, who had been imprisoned for 5 years, would have such strength. Anyway, it's a capital crime, and it's not bad to add 2 more lives. With a swing of Suzy's sword, the guard with the broken arm was chopped off in half and fell into a pool of blood. Thump. Another guard saw Suzy's strength and knew that he was no match. He quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Suzy to admit his mistake. The villain was also deceived by Lard, and he definitely didn't mean to tease the eldest prince. I hope the eldest prince, if there are a lot of them, I will forgive you. Pooh. Before he could finish speaking, Suzy swung his sword again, chopped off his head, and said coldly, I came out for revenge, not for forgiveness, begging for mercy, it doesn't make any sense. The Nirvana sword killed 2 people in a row, and the blade was still clean, without any blood stains. Then at this moment, a passing servant witnessed the whole process of Suzy's murder. He was so frightened that he froze and ran out, muttering, Suzy killed someone. Suzy left the garden. I must immediately report this matter to the second prince. When he was running away, Suzy saw the servant, but the news that Suzy didn't kill innocent people and left the garden would spread sooner or later. The only thing to do right now is to strengthen oneself to deal with any difficulties from concubine Xiao and Zhou Cheng. Suzy took a deep breath. Every move of Nirvana sword art contained terrifying power, and naturally required a lot of aura. Therefore, even the most basic sword moves must reach the state of concentration before they can be used. Suzy thought for a while, then walked to the Royal Martial Arts Pavilion. Report. 90%. Chapter 109. The First Show of Strength. The Royal Martial Arts Pavilion is divided into 9 floors, and only the disciples of the royal family and those who are authorized by the royal family can enter. The Royal Martial Arts Pavilion has been established for more than 1,000 years, and it has tens of thousands of different types of martial arts, accounting for almost 1/3 of the martial arts in the Jinyuan continent. This is one of the reasons for the prosperity of the Great Zhou dynasty. Walking all the way to the gate of Martial Arts Pavilion, many people saw Suzy. Imprisoned in the royal garden for 5 full years, when they saw Suzy again, they were shocked and couldn't believe it. If you leave without the king's order, it is a disobedience, a serious crime, and you will definitely die. Suzy, are you out? At the gate of Martial Arts Pavilion, a young man in his early 20s stopped Suzy. The scum of the cellar seeking glory. Suzy glanced at him coldly. Zhao Wu, the son of an internal official of the Great Zhou dynasty, and the second prince Zhou Cheng walked very close. However, 5 years ago, this person was still Suzy's confidant, and when Suzy lost power, Zhao Wu immediately turned against him and joined Zhou Cheng's family, and pierced Suzy's dantian with a sword. I haven't heard from the second prince recently that the king will pardon you. Could it be that you escaped without permission? This is a capital crime of beheading. Even if I die, I will drag all of you to be buried with me. Zhao Wu smiled awe-inspiringly. 3 months later, concubine Xiao's grand concubine conferment ceremony will be held. Before the grand ceremony, there will be a small contest in the palace. Only members of the royal family can participate. With the second prince's cultivation, he will surely win the number 1. I'm afraid you don't have a chance. Hearing this, Suzy fell into silence. After concubine Xiao Gui was conferred, his son would definitely be conferred the crown prince. This martial arts competition is just an opportunity for Zhou Cheng to show his strength, and let him ascend to the position of prince in a legitimate way. Suzy was like that back then, so he knew it very well. Suzy, you, like your meticulous mother, can't see the facts clearly. Your dantian is ruined, and you are already a useless person. As long as you honestly stay in the garden as a useless person for a lifetime, people from thousands of miles will naturally forget you slowly. But you want to defy the holy order and run out. Isn't this the way to kill yourself? Zhao Wu quietly drew his sword and shouted, rebelling against Suzy, disobeying the holy order, and escaping from the royal garden privately. My Zhao family has received the grace of the holy grace and received the royal salary. When encountering such things, I should stand up. Quote. After the voice fell, passers-by inside and outside the martial arts pavilion were all attracted. Nearly 100 people formed a circle, pointing at Suzy, talking a lot. Look, it's really the eldest Prince Suzy 5 years ago. I thought he died in the royal garden. His mother was a secret agent of the enemy country and was executed by the lord of the country, while his dantian was shattered and his cultivation was completely ruined. The great prince who was once a glorious prince is gone forever. His mother dug up the grave and smashed the steel to vent her personal anger. This kind of indecent means can be used. I don't believe that he didn't know it. It was extremely lenient that the king didn't execute him together. He dared to escape. If you leave the garden, you are looking for death. Listening to everyone's discussion, the corners of Zhao Wu's mouth rose slightly. In any case, Suzy is the Lord's own son, with the status of the eldest prince. Even if he is a sinner, he is not able to deal with it. But Suzy disobeyed the order and fled, and Zhao Wu tried his best to arrest him. Suzy, the traitor, if you catch him without a fight, you can save some flesh and blood. Don't force me to catch you myself. Zhao Wu said forcefully. Catch me, are you worthy? Suzy stared at him coldly. 5 years ago, Zhao Wu was only at the peak of qi refining. After such a long time, he could only step into the foundation establishment realm. This kind of person doesn't even have the qualifications to be sus opponent. Everyone, Suzy doesn't listen to kind words. I was forced to do so. Zhao Wu stepped off his horse, holding a sword in both hands, pointing the tip of the sword at Suzy. His eyes were sharp, revealing a trace of killing intent. If you want to do it, do it. How can there be so much nonsense? Suzy stood upright with his sword drawn, his body standing straight, with long black hair, and he moved without wind, like a young man who had returned from tempering, with a face full of resoluteness. Even after 5 years of silence, the royal majesty and princely demeanor engraved in his bones have not disappeared at all. A waste whose dantian has been abolished. How dare you be so arrogant? Do you really think that I will be afraid of your status as the eldest prince, and dare not take action against you? Zhao Wu smiled coldly, and stabbed Suzy's chest with a sword. Clang! Suzy took half a step back, and put the scabbard on his chest with his left hand, just in time to block Zhao Wu's attack. Seeing this scene, everyone around the audience was shocked. Zhao Wu is a master in the early stage of foundation establishment, but Suzy's reaction, speed, and strength are all superior to Zhao Wu. Could it be that his cultivation? Asking for flowers. Point 0. When everyone was guessing, Suzy cut Zhao Wu's wrist with a sword. Pooh! Blood spurted, the tendons in his hands were cut, Zhao Wu screamed again and again, and the saber in his hand fell to the ground. So strong. The surrounding audience sighed in unison. Among the younger generation, there are not many who can step into the foundation building realm. Although Zhao Wu is the bottom of many foundation building masters, he is also a real foundation building master. To be defeated so lightly, it can be seen that Suzy's strength is much higher than him, and the two are not in the same realm at all. Your dantian has not been abolished. Zhao Wu's mind was shocked. He picked up the saber on the ground with his left hand, and stepped back in fear, no longer the arrogant posture just now. My dantian was abolished, all thanks to you, have you forgotten? Suzy stepped forward and broke the tendon in Zhao Wu's left hand. Then you. How is this possible? His hands were crippled, and Zhao Wu didn't howl in pain because of the pain from his body, but more because of the fear in his heart, and his body trembled. He has followed Suzy for many years, and he knows that this eldest prince has outstanding talent and superb swordsmanship, and he is a leader of the younger generation. If his dantian hadn't been abolished, it would have been a nightmare for everyone involved in this matter 5 years ago. Pooh! Without batting an eye, Suzy pierced Zhao Wu's abdomen mercilessly, crushing his dantian with his own hands. A whole body of foundation building and cultivation bases vanished into nothingness in an instant. Go back and tell Zhou Cheng. I will also participate in the royal competition, let him wash his neck and wait. After finishing speaking, Suzy entered the martial arts pavilion without looking back. Zhao Wu's heart was ashamed, his arms drooped, and he stumbled towards Zhou Cheng's mansion. Not long after, in a luxurious and beautiful palace, a man in a dragon robe stood with his hands behind his back, and only his stalwart back could be seen. Your Majesty, the first prince killed the garden guards and escaped. Just now, he broke Zhao Wu's tendon and crippled Zhao Wu's dantian, and then threatened to kill the second prince and concubine Xiao. An old eunuch lowered his head and said without any emotion. Let him make trouble, and see what he can perform. The man in the dragon robe said calmly. Report. 91%. Chapter 110. Sword Drawing Technique. Suzy stood by the window of the martial arts pavilion, not in a hurry to choose a martial skill, but looked out of the window with his hands behind his back, with some uncertainty between his brows. The news of killing the garden guards and abolishing Zhao Wu must have reached the ears of the king, Zhou Cheng and others. It stands to reason that if they do something, the guards who were arrested at this time should be surrounded by the martial arts pavilion. For such a long time, there was no movement at all. The king had no choice but to execute Qin Ji at the beginning, and he might have felt a trace of guilt in his heart, so it was fine to turn a blind eye. But when Suzy abolished Zhao Wu, Zhou Cheng didn't react at all even though he spoke so bluntly. Puzzled, Suzy shook his head, not wasting time on such questions. There are many swordsmanship and martial arts in the martial arts pavilion, but most of them are basic martial arts, which are not suitable for Suzy. 793. At this moment, several voices of discussion sounded. Miss Zhao, all the high-level swordsmanship skills you want are here. Sword drawing. To practice this technique, do you need to destroy your dantian? It's ridiculous. How could there be such a bizarre exercise in the world? Miss Zhao, this sword drawing technique was created by the first ruler of the country. It has a history of thousands of years, but no one has practiced it. Several young people surrounded a beautiful woman, talking non-stop. Created by the first king. Hearing these words, Su Li immediately looked in the direction of the voice. When he saw the woman surrounded by people that day, his eyes lit up immediately. Wanner. Suzy, are you out? Zhao Wan frowned, slightly surprised. Well, in the past 5 years, how have you been? The second prince and concubine Xiao shouldn't have made things difficult for you, right? Suzy stepped forward and asked with concern. 5 years ago, Suzy was the eldest prince of the Great Zhou dynasty, and Zhao Wan was the daughter of an important official of the dynasty, who was bestowed a marriage by the ruler himself. The two are talented and beautiful, which could have been a good story, but before they got married, a huge change occurred. Since then, the forces of Suzy Qinji's lineage have all been strongly suppressed by concubine Xiao Gui and Zhou Cheng. Before Suzy approached, several young disciples all stood in front of Suzy. Zhao Wan hid behind, not intending to let them get out of the way at all. Suzy, even if you come out, you are still wearing a sinful body. You are not worthy of Miss Zhao. The toad wants to eat swan meat. Do you think you are still the eldest prince of the Great Zhou dynasty? Go away. If you dare to disturb Miss Zhao again, don't blame us for throwing you off the stairs. Several young disciples clamored, completely ignoring Suzy. Don't do it, Zhao Wan exhorted. Facing Suzy's fiery gaze, she slowly lowered her head, deliberately avoiding Suzy's sight. Wanner, is something wrong? Suzy asked. He was imprisoned for 5 years, and the news was blocked. He had no idea what happened during these 5 years. Did concubine Xiao make things difficult for your Zhao family? Don't worry, I came out this time to make concubine Xiao's lineage disappear forever. Suzy is as imposing as a rainbow, and he is never afraid of others knowing his purpose. Because no matter how guilty he is, his status as the eldest prince will not change. Even if he is punished, only the ruler of the dynasty is qualified. If others dare to do something, and if they really pursue it, they will be guilty of the next crime. If the eldest prince is killed, then Saigon will plot rebellion. Suzy, you've been in the royal garden for 5 years, are you stupid? Miss Zhao is now the second prince's fiancé. If that's the case, how can the second prince make things difficult for the Zhao family? A young man sneered. Is that true? Suzy looked at Zhao Wan incredulously, like being struck by 5 thunders. Well, for the sake of the Zhao family, I have no choice. Zhao Wan took a deep breath, as if she had made great determination, and finally met Suzy's scorching gaze. I can understand. Suzy's eyes gradually lost joy, and his voice became calm. It only felt that for a moment, the distance between myself and Zhao Wan became very far away. But Suzy didn't blame her. Back then, the eldest prince's lineage lost power. If the Zhao family wanted to continue to gain a firm foothold in the Great Zhou dynasty, they had to fall to the second prince's lineage. A person who understands current affairs is a brilliant man. It is impossible for Zhao Wan to get involved with the entire Zhao family just for one Suzy. Even if she is willing, the Zhao family will not be willing. I just heard you talk about a book of swordsmanship that requires self-destruction of the Dantian to practice. Suzy squeezed in from them. I saw dozens of swordsmanship books on the table, and one of them was covered with thick dust. Just blow a breath, and the dust will fly. Technique. Suzy opened it and took a look. His pupils shrank suddenly, and he was shocked. The cultivation of sword drawing technique and Nirvana sword ju have the same effect. They both need to self-destruct the Dantian, and then use the whole body as a medium to absorb the aura of heaven and earth. It can be seen that this is indeed a martial art created by the first king. It's useless for you to keep this martial art book, I took it away. Suzy said calmly. Behind each martial arts book, there is a wooden tablet. As long as you put your hand on the wooden tablet and inject a little spiritual energy, you can brand the martial arts in your mind. Each person's aura is different, and it can be said to be unique. Leaving this trace of aura is equivalent to registering, which is very convenient. And martial arts, like weapons, are graded. Ordinary martial arts are divided into low-level, intermediate, and high-level 3 levels, and then there are yellow-level martial skills, mysterious-level martial skills, earth-level martial skills, and heaven-level martial skills. Martial arts above the Huang level all have superpower, and there are thresholds for cultivation. Only those above the level of concentration can practice. Otherwise, if you practice forcefully, there will only be one result: explode and die. Weapons are divided into stars. 1-star weapons are the most common, and 9-star weapons are the most. It is rumored that there is only one 9-star weapon in the entire Great Zhou dynasty, which is in the hands of the current king. HMPH. To practice this martial skill, you need to destroy your Dantian, and Dantian is more important than your life to us monks. I think you are crazy at 4.1. The first king's talent is extraordinary. For thousands of years, he is the only one who is so strange. Do you think you can compete with the first king? The cultivation of sword drawing is extremely difficult, no less than Huang level martial arts. You are a useless person now, even if the rubbing is gone. Within 3 to 5 years, you will never be able to comprehend the essence of sword drawing. A few people next to him were chattering. Zhao Wan's expression was indifferent, neither dissuading nor ridiculing, as if everything about Suzy had nothing to do with her. Suzy smiled slightly, and put his hand on the wooden sign. There is a saying, you were right, I just want to become an unrivaled powerhouse like the first king. There was only a buzzing sound, and the wooden sign flashed a white light, indicating that the martial skill rubbing was successful. Seeing this scene, everyone including Zhao Wan was stunned and petrified on the spot. Report, 91%. Chapter 111. All parties prepare. You're Dantian. Zhao Wan looked at Suzy in disbelief. If you want to rubbing martial skills from the martial skill pavilion, you must meet the corresponding conditions. Ordinary martial arts are fine, but this martial skill requires self-destruction of the Dantian, just like martial arts above the Huang level, requires the cultivation of the state of concentration to rub the seal. Suzy's successful rubbing of martial skills can only show that his Dantian is completely abolished. That's right, I'm a person without a Dantian just like the first king. Suzy smiled and left freely. At this moment, the residence of the second prince. Zhou Cheng was completely naked, sitting cross-legged in the bathtub, the heat rising. There are a lot of natural materials and earthly treasures soaked in the bathtub, and anyone can be sold for a sky-high price. As for such treasures, Zhou Cheng would use up a lot of them in his practice every night. It is precisely because of these external blessings that Zhou Cheng's cultivation has advanced by leaps and bounds. He has reached the early stage of foundation establishment and is now impacting the middle stage of foundation establishment. Second prince, you have to be the master of your subordinates. Zhao Wu was wrapped in 24 bandages, knelt down on the ground with a plop, and looked at Zhou Cheng weeping bitterly. I know everything about you. Zhou Chengfeng replied calmly. The second prince, hurry up and send someone to arrest Suzy, you must have many ways to kill him. Mentioning Suzy, Zhao Wu's eyes were full of resentment. For a practitioner, the most important thing is the Dantian. If the Dantian is destroyed, he will be a useless person for the rest of his life, without any future. The Lord should know about Suzy, but he turned a blind eye to it. It is obvious that he intends to protect Suzy. My prince's attack on him at this time is undoubtedly against the Lord. Don't worry, Suzy will also participate in the royal competition. At that time, the sword has no eyes. This prince will kill him himself to avenge you. Zhou Cheng said calmly. Second prince, Suzy's Dantian has been abolished, but he has a strange strength equivalent to the foundation establishment realm, you can definitely. Before Zhao Wu could finish speaking, Zhou Cheng suddenly opened his eyes, glared at him, and reprimanded him. I don't need you to point fingers about my prince's affairs, get out. Subordinates leave. Zhao Wu broke out in a cold sweat and left in a hurry. This useless trash. If it weren't for the fact that you are also from the Zhao family, I would have kicked you away. Zhou Cheng's eyes were like lightning, and he looked into the distance, releasing a powerful aura that surpassed the initial stage of foundation establishment from all over his body. He clearly remembered that when he left the Imperial Garden that day, Suzy was a waste with no cultivation at all, and his Dantian was also destroyed. But after not seeing him for a few days, he suddenly became a master with foundation building skills, and even abolished Zhao Wu. Fortunately, there is only a thin line between Zhou Cheng and the middle stage of foundation establishment. He is fully confident that before the royal competition starts, he will break through to the middle stage of foundation establishment, and then rely on his state of crushing to kill Suzy in one fell swoop, so as to avoid future troubles. On the other side, Suzy is not idle either. He found a secluded place and practiced the sword skill seriously. Suzy himself has mastered many martial arts, but they are miscellaneous but not perfect. What's more, he is now specializing in Nirvana sword art, so naturally he must put swordsmanship first. Practice makes perfect. Mastery does not mean proficiency. So, Suzy was alone, and used the sword drawing technique infinitely until the aura in his body was exhausted, and he sat down to rest. Even if you rest, you still meditate to recover your own spiritual energy faster, and so on. Fortunately, the sword drawing technique did not disappoint Suzy. Although it was a high-level martial art, its power was not much inferior to that of Huang-level martial arts. Especially with the Nirvana sword, Suzy has full confidence to kill any opponents in the early stage of foundation establishment with one sword. In other words, in the same realm, no one can match. Shuaner. At this moment, a hoarse voice sounded. Immediately afterwards, a middle-aged man strode towards Su Zhejiu. He is tall, wearing golden armor, with a resolute face, but his eyes are full of joy. Uncle. The moment Su Zi saw him, he was extremely happy. If there is anyone in the great Zhou dynasty who really cares about him, it is probably the only person in front of him. Zhou Boming, the younger brother of the king of the country. He was named the king of Guangnan. He is brave and good at fighting. He guards one side. When Qin Ji died of injustice, Zhou Boming wanted to seek justice for Qin Ji, but just as war broke out in the frontier, he was sent to garrison the frontier. Later, when the war subsided, Zhou Boming wanted to return to the court to report on his duties, but concubine Xiao and others obstructed it, forcing Zhou Boming to stay in the frontier. If it weren't for this post-sealing ceremony, Zhou Boming might not be able to return to the capital for the rest of his life. Zhou Boming walked up to Su Zi in 3 steps at a time, checked it carefully, then patted Su Zi's shoulder vigorously, and comforted him. Uncle heard about you when he came back, so he rushed over immediately. Come on, Shuaner. I have suffered for you for the past 5 years. Uncle, will you leave when you come back this time? Su Zi asked. Knowing the deep meaning of Su Zi's words, Zhou Boming put his arms around Su Zi's shoulders, and sat under the root of the tree. Shuaner, I've heard about your affairs. Uncle will definitely do his best for what you want to do. Support. Thank you, Uncle. Su Zi's heart warmed up. At the beginning when Qin Ji was brought back to the great Zhou dynasty, Zhou Boming was still the second prince, while Zhou Zhenchen, the lord of the dynasty, was the crown prince, and both of them fell in love with Qin Ji. Later Zhou Zhenchen ascended the throne and became the lord of a country, and Qin Ji also liked Zhou Zhenchen, so Zhou Boming had no choice but to give up. But Zhou Boming never married. Until Su Zi was born, Zhou Boming always treated him as his own son. 767 Shuaner. Although I haven't been back to the capital for a long time, I know a little bit about the affairs of the capital. If you want to clear up your mother's grievances, the only way is for me to help you become emperor. Zhou Boming's gaze was incomparably hot, his expression was serious, and there was no intention of joking at all. Uncle. Su Zi's heart was shaking. She only wanted to clean up her mother's grievances and bring down concubine Xiao's side, but she never thought about ascending the throne. Shuaner, concubine Xiao's faction is very powerful now, and it is very difficult to bring them down. The most important thing is that the king personally ordered your mother to be executed back then, so he might feel guilty. But there is absolutely no way he would admit his mistake. Up to now, I can tell you one more thing. The lord of the country knew that your mother was wrong back then, but all the officials jointly filed a petition. In addition, the Xiao family is deeply rooted in the dynasty. Not long after the lord took the throne, if you want to secure the throne, you can't head on with the officials, you can't head on with the Xiao family. Zhou Boming's 2 words exploded in Su Zi's mind like a bolt from the blue. He had always thought that his biological father, the ruler of the dynasty, ordered Qin Ji to be executed because he was deceived by traitors. If it is true what Zhou Boming said, then his own father was a murderer who executed his beloved woman for the sake of the throne. What is the difference between him and a ruthless person like concubine Xiao Gui? Report. 91%. Chapter 112. A little trial. Uncle, I understand what you mean, I want to be alone. Su Zi's thoughts are all hopeless. At this moment, Su Zi only felt that an impassable mountain suddenly appeared out of thin air on the road of revenge, which made him breathless. That is the king of the dynasty. His own biological father. But in order to please the Xiao clan and secure the throne, he personally executed his beloved woman and exiled his own son. How crazy is this? Shuaner, Uncle didn't intend to tell you, but you are Qin Ji's son, you should know the truth. This is Uncle's tiger head token. If you encounter difficulties, take the token and come to Uncle. Zhou Boming put the token beside Su Zi, sighed, and left immediately. After he left, Su Zi sat alone under the tree for a day and a night. At first, her mind was in a mess and she was full of thoughts, not knowing what to do. Later, Su Zi gradually strengthened her determination to avenge her mother. During the 5 years in exile, Su Zi never extinguished his determination to avenge his mother. Even if you know the truth now, you still can't give up. All the people involved in this matter must pay the corresponding price. For the next half-month, Su Zi practiced sword drawing day and night besides eating. With Su Zi's incomparable talent and perseverance, it took only half a month to master the sword drawing technique to a small degree, and it will take a period of time to hone it to perfection. If the original king was present, he would be amazed at Su Zi's talent. Sword drawing is different from other martial arts of swordsmanship. It is very difficult to practice. It takes 3 to 2 months for ordinary people to master it. It takes at least half a year or even longer to practice it to a small degree. Suzy practiced in half a month to achieve a small success, which is rare in the world. At the same time, the entire Zhou dynasty knew the news that Suzy had left the royal garden, and rumors swirled for a while. In the past half a month, the king didn't send anyone to summon him, as if he had forgotten his son. While disappointed, there was also a tinge of rejoicing. Because he was really going to meet the king, Suzy didn't know what kind of emotions he should use to face him. Is it the biological father? Or the murder of the mother and the enemy? The second prince's lineage was also very quiet. For half a month, no one came to trouble Suzy. Tomorrow is the royal contest. I must kill him. Suzy clenched his fists tightly with killing intent. He knew in his heart that Zhou Cheng must have the same idea as him. Now that things have come to an end, humiliating, retreating and forbearing can only lead to death. He just wants to use the strongest posture to prove to everyone that he, Suzy, has always taken revenge. Killing Zhou Cheng is only the first step. The next step is concubine Xiao. Ashram. This place is where the royal family spends a huge amount of money, a lot of manpower and material resources to build a spiritual gathering place, and it is exclusively for the children of the royal family to practice. The area of the retreat field is not very large, and it can only accommodate 100 people to practice at the same time. Below the field, there are small-scale gathering formations. A day of practicing here is worth 2 days outside. Suzy practiced sword drawing under a dead tree. Whenever the spiritual energy in her body was exhausted, she would come to the retreat to meditate and practice to restore her spiritual energy. At this time, Suzy's spiritual energy was exhausted, and after sitting down to practice for less than 2 hours, a piercing sound came suddenly. Suzy, you are now wearing a crime. To put it bluntly, you are a prisoner. Is this a place for you to come? Get out of here. A young man in white yelled. Suzy could hear such sarcasm every time he came. Most of them were from the second prince's lineage. Suzy was immersed in cultivation, ignored them, and when they scolded them until they found it boring, they would naturally stop. Do you dare to ignore this prince? The young man in white raised his leg and kicked Suzy on the back. Boom. Suzy didn't even open his eyes. He turned around suddenly, and hit the young man in white with his fist. Rub rub rub. The young man in white retreated 3 steps in a row as if he had been hit by a huge force, while Suzy sat on the spot without moving a muscle. Suzy, if you dare to attack the prince, it is a death penalty. There were a lot of people in the retreat, and everyone could see that his kick not only didn't get the slightest benefit, but it was shameful. Xiaoqi, as the eldest prince, it is not wrong for me to teach you as the elder brother, but you are disrespectful to the elder brother. If you really want to investigate, it is not certain who the disciplinary department is looking for trouble. Suzy slowly opened his eyes and looked at Zhou Nan with disdain. Zhou Zhenshin has 7 heirs in total. Suzy is the eldest and Zhou Nan is the youngest. But Zhou Nan's talent was able to rank in the middle and upper reaches among the 7 princes, and now he has stepped into the foundation building realm. Your mother is a traitor to the great Zhou dynasty. You have been exiled by the Lord for another 5 years. What kind of eldest prince are you? I think you are a traitor to the great Zhou dynasty, just like your delicate mother, with the blood of the enemy country flowing in your body. Quote. To provoke me, yes. To insult my mother, no. This prince is going to say that your mother is not only a traitor, but also a traitor. You wanna die. Suzy stood up brazenly and punched Zhou Nan in the face. Swish. Zhou Nan drew back and dodged the punch. Suzy, tomorrow is the Royal Martial Arts competition, and it happens that the prince will check for the second brother first to see if you are qualified to participate in the martial arts competition. Suzy shook his head. He didn't expect that. Apart from those officials and ministers, even the prince was attached to Zhou Cheng's lineage. If things go on like this, it is not certain whether the Zhou dynasty is surnamed Zhou or Xiao. Kamikaze fist. Zhou Nan is good at boxing and uses advanced martial arts. The aura rioted in the retreat field. Zhou Nan swung his fists extremely fast, leaving dozens of fist shadows in the air. Although these fist shadows are illusory, they contain very terrifying power. Seeing this scene, the rest of the people in the retreat retreated away one after another, and at the same time cast a pitiful look at Suzy. This is trying to kill me. Suzy's eyes lit up and he muttered to himself. Don't make any temptations. Come up and release the strongest attacking martial arts, and go all out. Where is there any competition? What does it mean? It is clearly to divide life and death. Suzy stepped down on the horse, leaning forward, holding the scabbard in his left hand, and the hilt in his right hand. The spiritual energy in his body surged, and a strong aura like leaves surrounded Suzy in all directions. Go to hell. Zhou Nan is a very face-saving person. Just now he made a fool of himself in public. At this moment he was already a little bit overwhelmed by anger. Sword drawing. Suzy didn't dodge, and suddenly drew the sword with his right hand, only to see a white light flash, and all the shadows of the fists that were coming were blown away and disappeared without a trace. The power of drawing the sword is far more than that. The strong sword energy continued to charge forward, and finally hit Zhou Nan's chest. Puff. There was severe pain in Zhou Nan's chest, and he flew upside down. After knocking down 3 or 4 people, he just stopped, spewed a big mouthful of blood, and immediately sniffed it. Carry it away. Don't miss the timing of treatment and leave sequelae. Suzy said lightly and left in a cool way. He only showed 50% of his strength in that sword attack just now. If he hit with all his strength, he could definitely split Zhou Nan in half. After this battle, Suzy has gained some confidence in his own strength. Report. 91%. Chapter 113. The Orphan of Zhongmen. Not long after, the second prince's mansion, above the main hall. A graceful and luxurious woman sat on the top, wearing a phoenix hairpin and a phoenix robe. She didn't speak, but it made people feel a strong aura of superiority. Look carefully at her eyes. Under the beautiful eyes, there is a vicious killing intent hidden. Chang'er, 5 years ago we were the ones who were soft-hearted and made him hide his strength and bide his time for so many years. This time, we will kill him no matter what. Concubine Xiao Gui's voice was as cold as ice. Mother, don't worry, tomorrow's royal competition, I will kill him with my own hands. Zhou Cheng raised his fist and smiled triumphantly as if he had the chance to win. Chang'er, he first abolished Zhao Wu, and then defeated Zhou Nan. Although he only possessed the cultivation base of the early stage of foundation establishment, he is still not to be underestimated. This contest is related to when you will ascend to the crown prince. Concubine Xiao Gui patiently exhorted, feeling worried for Zhou Cheng. She regretted that she should have killed Suzy 5 years ago, so that there would not be so many troubles now. Your Highness, you don't have to worry. At this time, Zhao Wan, who was sitting beside Zhou Cheng, stood up, and said with a smile in her eyes, the second prince has already broken through to the middle stage of foundation establishment, and he is the one with the highest cultivation level among all the princes. And the second prince also practiced the high-level martial arts taught by the Lord himself, the stone hammering method, to a small level, and if he wanted to defeat Suzy, it would be as easy as flipping the palm of his hand. Zhou Cheng laughed out loud, and in front of concubine Xiao, without caring about his image at all, he hugged Zhao Wan on his lap and hugged her in his arms, while his other hand wandered irregularly around her body. Empress, what Wanner said is right. My cultivation level crushes everyone, and with the help of the stone hammer technique, killing a little Suzy is a piece of cake. Since breaking through to the middle stage of foundation establishment, Zhou Cheng has been arrogant and defiant. Wanner congratulates the second prince in advance for winning the championship. Zhao Wan trembled slightly. She didn't reject Zhou Cheng, but greeted Zhou Cheng with a smile. Concubine Xiao pursed her lips, pondered for a moment, then took out a small emerald green bottle from her bosom, and ordered, Wanner, you and Suzy were engaged to each other, and after so many years of relationship, he must be wary of you. Deep. Here is the hard-biting pill in it. If you give it to him, it will be said to be a pill for improving one's cultivation. Heart-eater pill. Hearing these 3 words, Zhao was taken aback. Heart-biting pill is colorless and tasteless. Within a day after taking it, the person will feel the burning pain in his heart, as if his heart is crushed and exploded by a big hand, and finally he will die of pain. Even after the final autopsy, no clues could be found. It's still the Queen Mother who thinks well. Zhou Jianli was about to bring the small green CEBH bottle, put it on Zhao Wan's chest lewdly, and then slipped it into her collar. Wanner, Zhao Wu is also a member of your Zhao family, don't you want to avenge him? As long as you complete this matter, I can assure you that the Zhao family will be prosperous and rich for generations. Concubine Xiao pressed her step by step, and she said good words and promises, but Zhao Wan could hear those cruel words, although Concubine Xiao didn't say those cruel words, but she knew it very well in her heart. Okay, I'll do it. Zhao Wan nodded. At the same time, outside the main hall, the expression of a woman in armor changed drastically, and she walked out in 2 steps and 3 steps. Princess Chenyang, don't you want to see the second prince? Suddenly, the housekeeper of the second prince's mansion saw her about to leave, and hurriedly asked. It's gone. Afraid of being stopped, Yang Qingzu immediately left the emperor's mansion before the second prince knew that she had overheard everything outside the door just now. After leaving, Yang Qingzu ran all the way, and finally found Suzy who was practicing sword under the dead tree. Suzy big brother. Green bamboo. Suzy was slightly surprised, and stood with his sword. The generals of the Yang family are all loyal and loyal. Many years ago, Yang Qingzu's parents and elder brothers all died in battle, leaving Yang Qingzu alone, so he was named Princess Chenyang by the Lord. Her status in the Great Zhou dynasty was not low, almost equal to that of the prince. But the relationship between Suzy and her was just from playing with her when she was a child, and then she grew up. After she made a marriage contract with Zhao Wan, the relationship gradually faded away. Suzy, big brother, I went to the second prince's mansion just now. I wanted to borrow the Holy Spirit orb from the second prince, but I overheard them talking about how to harm you. Harm me? Yes. Zhou Cheng's cultivation base has broken through to the middle stage of foundation establishment, and he has practiced the rock hammering technique to a small degree, but they still don't trust you, so concubine Xiao gave Zhao Wan a heart-eating pill and asked her to deceive you. Take the heart-devouring pill. Waner can't harm me. Suzy denied it outright. Yang Qingzu was about to explain, but suddenly saw Zhao Wan running from a distance, with a happy smile on his face, and an extremely intimate voice, Big brother. Waner, you came to see me. Suzy froze, but soon smiled. The last time we met in martial arts pavilion, Su Luo could clearly feel the indifference Zhao Wan used to dominate him thousands of miles away. At that time, Suzy could understand. After all, Zhao Wan could only alienate Suzy in order to keep the Zhao family safe. But today, if her intimate and ambiguous attitude is heard by the second prince, the consequences will be very serious. Well, Chenyang kilometer is here. Zhao Wan saluted Yang Qingzu, and then cut to the chase. Suzy, big brother, I know you will definitely participate in tomorrow's royal competition, so I specially asked for this pill that can improve cultivation from my father. Take it quickly. Zhao Wan took out the green bottle and handed it to Suzy with a smile. What kind of elixir is contained in it, which actually improves cultivation? I want to see it. Yang Qingzu knew that it contained the heart-eating pill, so he immediately reached out to grab it. Thank you, Waner. Suzy shot ahead of her and took the green bottle. I don't know what kind of elixir is in the bottle, but my father has always regarded it as a treasure, threatening to improve his cultivation and break through the bottleneck. I have spent a lot of effort to come here. Suzy, big brother, you should hurry up and try to perform well in the royal competition tomorrow. The smile on Zhao Wan's face remained undiminished, and she convinced Suzy with constant price. The more she was like this, the more worried Yang Qingzu was, looking at Suzy eagerly, not wanting him to take that heart-eating pill foolishly. Okay, I'll take it now. Suzy smiled and poured out the heart-biting pill from the green bottle, put it in his palm, put it in his mouth in front of Zhao Wan, and swallowed it. You're crazy. Yang Qingzu was taken aback. Suzy stopped Yang Qingzu with one hand, looked at Zhao Wan with a smile, and said, Waner, thank you for the elixir, I have to hurry up and practice now, if there is nothing else, you can go back first. Good. Watching Suzy take the heart-biting pill with her own eyes, Zhao Wan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. A vicious heart was hidden under her hypocritical smile, and she turned and left immediately. That's the heart-biting pill. Within a day, you will die of pain. You should exercise your energy and breath, suppress the toxin, and I will help you find an antidote immediately. Yang Qingzu was in shock and anxious, as if she had swallowed the heart pill herself. Report. 92%. Chapter 114. Pretend. No need, I believe Waner won't harm me. Suzy stops Yang Qingzu. Do you trust her that much, and don't trust me even half of it? Qingzu, you should go back too, I'm going to practice. Suzy forcibly sent Yang Qingzu away, and after making sure that there was no one around, he slapped himself on the chest. Puff. Under great force, Suzy spewed out a big mouthful of blood, and in the blood was mixed with elixir, which was the heart-biting sun that he swallowed just now. Call. Suzy let out a long breath, and looked into the distance with bright eyes. He didn't see that this pill was a heart-eating pill, but Zhao Wan's behavior today was too abnormal, which made Suzy suspicious, and Yang Qingzu informed him in advance, so he was on guard. But this might not be a good opportunity to deceive the second prince and the others, so as to have an unexpected effect in the royal contest. Putting the elixir in your mouth, this kind of trick may not be able to fool Zhao Wan. Then you can only really swallow the heart-chewing pill, and then block the heart-chewing pill in your throat with the spiritual energy in your body. Because he couldn't keep the heart-biting pill stuck in his throat, he rushed Yang Qingzu and Zhao Wanji away. The next day, Yangdian. In the main hall, dozens of people gathered. Sitting on the left and right sides are 7 princes, Princess Chenyang and a group of young talents from the Great Zhou dynasty. A little behind are the loyal ministers of the court and a group of relatives of the emperor. Suzy stood in an unoccupied corner, looking at these familiar faces, no different from 5 years ago. The only difference is that these people now look at him coldly. Although he is the eldest prince, He doesn't even have a place to sit, so he can only stand in the corner like a servant. Not long after, a man and a woman entered Zhengyang Hall. The man's figure is tall and straight, he is not angry and majestic, and his body is surrounded by dragon aura. It is Zhou Zhenshan, the current king. The woman is graceful and luxurious, with a smile all over her face. She is the concubine Xiao Gui who is about to be conferred. As soon as the two of them appeared, they attracted everyone's attention, and they all got up and knelt down and bowed. Stay flat. Zhou Zhenshan waved his hand, and while they were kneeling down, he looked at Suzy twice more, but he quickly looked away without anyone noticing. Today's martial arts competition is intended to test you young people. You must go to the end, and you must not injure your opponent, understand? Zhou Zhenshan scanned everyone with his majestic eyes, and everyone nodded in agreement. Afterwards, Zhou Zhenshan waved his sleeves and sat on the dragon chair. Concubine Xiao stood beside her, ranking above everyone else, which clearly showed her status in the great Zhou dynasty. Since it is a competition, the winner will naturally win the prize. I promise that the first place in the competition can enter the dragon's restroom to practice for 3 days, and I can grant him one request. Following Zhou Zhenshan's words, the Zhengyang palace erupted instantly, and all the young talents were talking non-stop. Suzy's gaze also gradually became hot. Agreeing to a request seems to be very good, but the person who made the request would never dare to make it indiscriminately. On the contrary, the dragon diverticulum practiced for 3 days, which is even more desirable. The meditation ground is exclusively for the children of the royal family to practice, and the dragon restroom is the place where the ruler of the country cultivates. Those with outstanding talents, practicing in the dragon restroom for a day, can be worth a month of hard work outside the world, and those with common talents can also compare with the outside world. 10 days and a half months of penance. It is rumored that the dragon's diverticulum is the place where the dragon veins of the great Zhou dynasty gather, and the aura is so thick that it is almost liquid. It is precisely because he can practice in the dragon's diverticulum day and night that Zhou Zhenshan can become the most powerful person in the great Zhou dynasty. If there is no objection, let's start, and the order will be determined by drawing lots. Zhou Zhenshan lay on the dragon chair and said lightly. Everyone dispersed in an orderly manner, leaving an open space in the middle of Zhengyang Hall. As soon as the words fell, all the young talents headed by the second prince stepped forward and drew lots from the eunuch's hands one by one. Suzy drew lots for the last time, and returned to the original place without looking at the contents of the lottery. His eyes were always on the second prince and the others. Except for the second prince who is in the middle stage of foundation establishment, there are also a few masters in the early stage of foundation establishment, and the rest of them only have cultivation levels below foundation establishment. Suzy couldn't help but find it ridiculous. 5 years ago, he was already a peak foundation builder, and they obviously had 5 years to catch up with Suzy. Now the highest cultivation is only in the middle of foundation buildup. If it wasn't for the sudden change, Suzy should have become the youngest person in the state of concentration in the great Zhou dynasty, and even in the Jinyuan continent. I am the number 1. Who else has the number 1 lottery? Suddenly, Zhou Nan stood up and looked around with the number 1 lottery in his hand. The rest of the people silently looked at their signatures. After a long time, no one answered. Suzy, what number are you in the lottery? Zhou Cheng turned his gaze and landed on Su. Ask for flowers. Only then did Suzy take it out to see. It turned out to be the number 1 lottery, so he showed it to everyone. It's number 1, you're lucky. Zhou Cheng clenched the number 2 lottery in his hand, and cast a provocative look at Suzy. After a while, Suzy and Zhou Nan stood in the center of the Zhengyang Hall, but they were not the focus of the crowd. On the contrary, everyone was watching Zhou Zhenshan from the corner of their eyes. Before Suzy got the emperor's order, he killed the garden guards and escaped, and then abolished Zhao Wu. All kinds of crimes, once pursued, would kill Suzy. But Suzy stood in front of Zhou Zhenshan in person, but Zhou Zhenshan didn't say a word, making it clear that he wanted to make a big deal into a small one. Whoever steps up to mention this at this time will really be against the king. It's not fun. 0. Suzy, last time I was careless, this time, I must be ashamed. Zhou Nan's fists were clenched, and he couldn't hide any emotions. Anyone with eyes could tell that his face was full of murderous intent. Bring it on. Suzy hooked his finger at Zhou Nan. Snort. Zhou Nan snorted coldly and threw his fist at Suzy. With the experience from last time, Zhou Nan knew in his heart that head-to-head is not the same as being able to defeat Suzy, so he can only rely on boxing techniques, keep probing, and wait until Suzy shows his flaws before using magic. Boom. Suzy resisted with a horizontal sword, and a scene that shocked everyone suddenly happened. Puff. With just a common punch, Suzy coughed up blood, his face turned pale. Although the people present didn't know what happened, they could tell that Suzy seemed to have been seriously injured, and he was trying to suppress the injury in his body at the moment, and his strength was greatly reduced. The poison of the hard-biting pill has exploded. Zhou Cheng and concubine Xiao looked at each other. Concubine Xiao was calm and expressionless, she couldn't see anything, while Zhou Cheng's face was full of complacency. My lord, Suzy big brother is injured, I request to suspend the contest. Yang Qingzu stepped forward and begged on his knees. I'm fine. Suzy staggered to a steady stand, stepped down on the horse, held the hilt of the sword with his right hand, and moved forward, ready to use the sword drawing technique. Seventh brother, let's decide the outcome with one move. Just what I want. Zhou Nan was secretly delighted. I couldn't beat you at the peak. Could it be that I can't beat you when you are injured? Report. 92%. Chapter 115. Battle against Zhou Cheng. Xuaner is injured. This contest is unfair. Zhou Bombing stepped forward and stood in the center of the hall. A terrifying pressure permeated Zhou Nan's body, and Zhou Nan couldn't move. Xuaner, why didn't you tell uncle when you were hurt? Zhou Bombing looked at Suzy with concern on his face, and then turned his eyes full of hostility to concubine Xiao Gui. He clearly remembered that when he saw Suzy last time, his body was full of aura, and his spirit was full of energy. If he hadn't become obsessed with practicing martial arts, then he had been harmed by others. King Guangnan, this is the Zhengyang Palace, and the Lord has not spoken. What qualifications do you have to stand up and ask for a suspension of the contest? Could it be that you are despising the Lord? Concubine Xiao's words were like knives, and with one sentence, she put a big hat on Zhou Bombing. The atmosphere in Zhengyang Hall was tense instantly, and all the ministers even became cautious about breathing. One is the beloved concubine next to the king, who will soon be crowned queen, and the other is the brother of the 687 king, the great general King Guangnan who guards one side. Uncle, I'm fine. Suzy's eyes were firm, and he pushed Zhou Bombing away. Zhou Bombing weighed in, sighed, returned to his seat, but uttered harsh words, who dares to hurt Xuaner, I will unscrew his skull. Hiss. As soon as these words came out, everyone gasped. As the seventh prince, Zhou Nan was very aware of Zhou Bombing's temper and methods. The murderous intent in his eyes gradually faded a lot, and there was even a trace of fear in his eyes. Seventh brother. Come on. Suzy took a deep breath, pretended to try hard to suppress the injury, and drew his sword to prepare. Kamikaze fist. Zhou Nan used kamikaze fist again, but its power was less than 50% of the last time. Sword drawing. Suzy shouted loudly. With the experience of the last battle, Su only displayed one success story this time. Swish. White's sword energy was rampant, making a whistling sound in the air, and everyone was stunned. Boom. The sword energy collided with the shadow of the fist. Without any accident, Zhou Nan was knocked into the air again, flying 4 or 5 meters away. Suzy's throat was sweet, and he spat out a mouthful of blood in front of everyone. The Nirvana sword in his hand fell to the ground with a clang, so he hurriedly sat cross-legged on the spot to recover from his injuries. In just 1 week, he was able to refine the sword-drawing skills of the first king to a small level, and hurt people with sword energy. His talent may not be inferior to that of the first king. Zhou Zhenshan's eyes showed a strange light, and then he shook his head again. No matter how talented you are, half of the enemy's blood is still flowing in your body. Match 1. Suzy wins, Zhou Zhenshan said. The voice fell, and there was no one present to cheer. Suzy big brother, are you okay? Yang Qingzu immediately took out a pink elixir, handed it to Suzy, and said in a low voice, this is the Sanwei elixir, although it can't cure the poison of the heart elixir, it is enough to suppress the toxin and give us time to find the real antidote. However, Suzy big brother, you must not continue to compete. The flow of spiritual energy in your body will only accelerate the spread of toxins. Once it spreads to your whole body, even a god will be powerless to recover. 11. Suzy took the Sanwei Dan and smiled stubbornly, I'm fine, just rest for a while and I'll be fine. How could it be all right, that's, but. As Yang Qingzu spoke, his eyes gradually became rosy. Once the hard-biting pill's poison took hold, she could imagine what kind of pain Suzy was enduring at the moment, but she still had to pretend to be harmless. The more Suzy was like this, the more Yang Qingzu felt distressed. Xuaner, the second round of martial arts competition will be half a day away, go down and rest. 11. Zhou Bombing persuaded. Understood, uncle. Suzy nodded slightly, and then staggered out of Zhengyang Hall. At this time, Zhou Nan stood silently beside Zhou Cheng, and said in a low voice, second brother, last time I used my full strength to perform kamikaze fist, he was able to carry it out easily. This time, I only used 50% of my strength to be able to let him vomit blood so far. It can be seen that Suzy is seriously injured. Of course he was badly hurt. The corners of Zhou Cheng's mouth rose slightly, and Huang's eyes flickered. Second brother knows he was injured. You shouldn't know, don't ask too much. Yes, the second brother taught me a lesson. Zhou Nan took 2 steps back trembling, and didn't ask any more questions. Half a day later, the first round of competitions was over, and the second round of lottery was about to begin. Without exception, those who can enter the second round are all above the Foundation establishment realm, including Yang Qingzu. This time, you won't have such good luck. Zhou Cheng laughed and said, winking at the eunuch who was drawing lots. I'm number 1. Zhou Cheng's gaze was directed at Suzy. Suzy was the last one to draw lots again. Looking at the lottery number, it turned out to be number 1 too. Whether it is God's will or man-made, it is exactly what Suzy wanted, and he is too lazy to continue pretending to be injured in front of concubine Xiao and Zhou Cheng. Before the martial arts competition started, there were discussions in Zhengyang Hall. One is the former great prince, who has a great reputation and outstanding talent, and the other is the second prince who will be canonized as the prince. Tell me, who will win this contest? Does it need to be said? The second prince is currently in the middle stage of foundation establishment. Suzy is only in the early stage of foundation establishment, not to mention he is seriously injured. How could he be the opponent of the second prince? After the second prince wins this contest and enters the dragon's diverticulum to practice for 3 days, I'm afraid it won't be long before he can hit the late stage of foundation establishment. Zhou Cheng swaggered to the center of Zhengyang Hall, holding heavy hammers in both hands, leaning against his shoulders, holding his head high, and looked down on Su Long. Bring it on. Suzy stood with his sword in his hand. It is difficult to make up for a small gap in realm. The only chance is to take advantage of Zhou Cheng's underestimation of the enemy and kill him with a single blow. There is only one chance like this, and if it fails, Zhou Cheng and the others will see that he is not really injured. At that time, if you want to defeat him again, it will only be as difficult as climbing the sky. Stone hammer. As soon as Zhou Cheng came up, he used the powerful rock-throwing hammer method. Swinging the heavy hammer with both arms, every blow can bring out the sound of piercing the air, leaving afterimages in the air. The terrifying strong wind made those who stood a little closer feel pain in their cheeks, and couldn't help but stand more. The stone hammer method does not pay attention to tricks, but only focuses on strength and speed. With Zhou Cheng's cultivation in the middle stage of foundation establishment, even a master in the late stage of foundation establishment would not dare to go head-to-head with the chaotic stone hammer method. Everyone believed that, in the face of such a powerful attack, Suzy had to back down and find a loophole to attack. However, Suzy stood where he was, without taking half a step back, his eyes fixed on Zhou Cheng. Boom. In between breaths, the stone hammer smashed towards Suzy, and it was too late to dodge at this time. Boom. Suzy's complexion sank. He gritted his teeth, clenched the scabbard with his left hand, and placed it above his head, trying to block the violent force of the stone hammer technique. Boom. With just one blow, Suzy coughed up blood, lost consciousness in the hand holding the scabbard, and half of his body was numb from the shock. Even the Qingxi bricks under Suzy's feet were shattered by this force, sending dust flying, shocking everyone. Report. 92%. Chapter 116. A tooth for a tooth. Suzy spat out a mouthful of blood again, and took several steps backwards. It can be seen that although Zhou Cheng is annoying, his strength is indeed not blown out. The mid-stage of foundation establishment is the mid-stage of foundation establishment. A small gap in realm is actually a huge gap. Little Xuanzi, don't say that His Highness won't give you a chance. How about I give you 3 tricks? Zhou Cheng was overjoyed. He knew that Zhou Cheng was conceited after all. He was sure that he was poisoned now. If he just took advantage of the victory and pursued, who would be very dangerous Suzy. Although Zhou Cheng is only in the middle stage of foundation establishment, if he hadn't lost his kung fu before, he would not be his opponent at all, but now I have to say that he is indeed stronger than himself, and his true energy fluctuations are obviously stronger than himself. There is still an essential gap. Now he actually wants to make 3 tricks to himself, which makes Suzy feel good, and thinks that this is what he asked for. Look at the sword. In an instant, Suzy's body glowed with a sword light, which merged with the sword in his hand, and appeared in front of Zhou Cheng in an instant, and the sword directly pierced Zhou Cheng's chest. This time, whether it is speed or strength, it is completely different from the previous medical history. Is this what you measure? At this moment Zhou Cheng really sneered again and again, as if he didn't see how he moved his body, and he had already appeared behind Suzy. At the middle stage of Foundation establishment, the speed and power are terrifying, and it is not an exaggeration to describe it as a ghost. Suzy did have a sly look on his face, which seemed to be what he expected. After hitting the air with a sword, his right leg suddenly turned into a tiger's whip and swung towards Zhou Cheng's abdomen. Because the kick was too fast, this move was able to tear apart the air in the past. But Zhou Cheng still avoided it calmly. This time he seemed to show off his strength. He flew backwards with his toes on the ground very gracefully. Tisk tisk, little Schwanzi, you really disappointed my highness. My highness originally thought that you had improved this time, but it seems that you are so muddy that you can't support the wall. Everyone was shocked to watch the battle. Suzy's previous 2 attacks were really very subtle. Many of them wondered if they could avoid this attack. The answer is no. This Suzy is indeed a rising star of the great Zhou dynasty. And the little imperial concubine who was sitting next to His Majesty showed a smug smile on her face, thinking in her heart that trash is trash, and even you trash wants to compare with my son. My son is not only talented and intelligent, but also has great support from the royal family and the Xiao family. Even a pig can cultivate a master. But at this moment Zhou Cheng pretended to spit out a mouthful of blood again. He was a little surprised in his heart. On the surface he let himself go, but in fact he didn't take advantage of it at all, because Zhou Cheng seemed to have learned how to follow the wind like a shadow. Like a shadow follows the wind is a very advanced lightweight exercise of the great Zhou dynasty, and its speed is very fast. Thinking of this, Suzy took a deep breath. With his right foot on the ground, his body and the Nirvana sword seemed to be fused again, and the sword shot out, and the sword pointed directly at Zhou Cheng's chest. Unexpectedly, he used the same trick as before. Zhou Cheng almost didn't laugh. The most taboo thing in Kung Fu is to use one move repeatedly, which is the easiest way to show flaws. Could it be that this guy only knows 2 moves? Zhou Cheng was still calm and wanted to avoid it, but suddenly something happened at this moment. Suzy's body, which was originally like a sword of Huawei, rose up instantly, and a gold disc burst out from the long sword. Zhou Cheng was horrified. This is the sword energy that can only be released when the skill reaches a certain stage. Because Suzy's speed and strength increased instantly, he was a little surprised. At this moment, he obviously felt that Suzy had locked his body. If he was still pretending, then he would really be dead. The double hammers in his hand quickly blocked his chest, ready to catch this move abruptly. In fact, at this time, he had already broken his promise, the 3 moves he had agreed on, but in the end he made the last move. However, what surprised him even more was that when the Nirvana sword hit his hammer, at that moment he felt an overwhelming force that swept over him in an instant. That force was really terrifying. After pushing his body back more than a dozen steps, his breath became a little messy. The sword just now was too terrifying. It turns out he was pretending. At this time, many people understood that Suzy was not poisoned or injured at all, but he was deliberately acting weak to let Zhou Cheng be careless, and then he was looking for the best opportunity to make a move. It is obvious that Suzy has succeeded. At this moment, many people admire his calm mind. It is not easy to be able to do this on such occasions at such an age. On the final battle stage, Zhou Cheng was beaten a little bit angrily. Just now, he not only broke his promise, but also was repelled by this guy's move. He almost vomited blood. This is really embarrassing. Little bastard, you have completely pissed me off. You're throwing rocks and hammering. At this time, he knocked sharply and loudly, and there were bursts of roaring sounds. Those with low cultivation bases felt their blood surge up, and some couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. HMPH, besides playing with this hammer, can't you change some new tricks? At this moment, Suzy's face was surprisingly calm, and he lightly shook the Nirvana sword in his hand. It seemed that the Nirvana sword had communicated with its master, and even revealed a touch of brilliance. This seemingly simple Nirvana sword actually gave people a very intriguing feeling. What kind of sword is the sword in this kid's hand? Who knows, it feels like it's used by a guard. Hey, the guard's sword is much better than his. His sword is rusty. It must have been picked up from a garbage dump. None of the people present knew Nirvana sword. Suzy really knew that the Nirvana sword was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. When he got this sword by accident, he felt that the Nirvana sword was not simple. Today he was going to use his Nirvana sword to forcibly shake Zhou Cheng's pair of heavenly and earthly evil hammers. I was careless just now, but now I want to see how much you weigh. Do you think you dare to compare with my heavenly hammer with a broken sword? You are really naive. It is not easy to say that this heavenly gang Earth Shikong is actually a 6-star weapon, and its power is terrifying. Little bastard, eat my hammer. Zhou Cheng couldn't wait now. The big hammer in his hand contained the Thunderbolt Master, and he smashed it madly at Suzy's head. Once it is displayed, it is very terrifying. At this moment, the entire battle stage was full of phantoms of hammers flying, and the air seemed to be blown apart. Everyone present felt the mountain-like pressure sweeping over, and how many people felt that they were shocked by this terrifying aura. They really didn't expect Zhou Cheng's cultivation to be so terrifying. Boom. At this moment, Suzy held the Nirvana sword and the horizontal sword in his hand to block the air, and made a head-on move with the mountain-like hammer. The powerful air wave directly swept the floor of the ground like a carpet. Everyone thought that Suzy would be smashed into a pulp, but what people didn't expect was that after the aftermath, the dust cleared, and the young man was still holding his head high, exuding the aura of being invincible in Japan. Zhou Nan and Zhao Wan were astonished. They never dreamed that this trash who had been vomiting blood just now could forcibly withstand this impact. Zhou Cheng couldn't believe it at this time. Looking at the former prince who had been stepped on by him countless times, his eyes were a little crazy. Little bastard, I really didn't expect Shibi to look at you with admiration for 3 days. Even if you are killed by me today with your strength, you can still smile at Juquan and go to see your spy mother. HMPH, Zhou Cheng, if you insult my mother again, I will let you die without a place to bury you. Really, little bastard, you can catch my move, do you think you are really awesome? HMPH053, you hit me with a hammer just now it's my turn. Suzy didn't talk much nonsense, and instantly turned into dozens of afterimages, and the long sword in his hand turned into countless hard ones, and launched a crazy attack. Suzy was originally a master of swordsmanship, and he learned the art of drawing a sword, and integrated the essence of other swordsmanship, and now he is already very high in sword attainments. At this moment, the rain of swords swept down the sky, and there was a quasi-jingling sound, and the Tiangong Shishuang hammer and Nirvana sword collided continuously, every time. Enough to roll over. Gravel swept up. The fighting between the two sides became more and more terrifying, and it was unbelievable that this former useless prince had no intention of being suppressed at all, but instead had a faint feeling of gaining the upper hand. At that moment, many people even had a feeling that the long sword in Suzy's hand was no longer a sword, it seemed to be a part of his body. There were bursts of fierce collision sounding continuously, the two sides fought more and more courageously, and the hammering method in troubled times almost tore down the entire final stage, but Suzy looked like you can do whatever you want. I feel from the breeze. With the continuous fusion with the Nirvana sword, he felt that his sword skills were becoming more and more handy. At this time, Zhou Cheng was completely irritable, and he was already a little impatient for Suzy to be so jumping around like a clown for so long. Tiger and leopard double punch. At this time Zhou Cheng was completely enraged. He didn't hold back his hands anymore. The aura on his body instantly increased several times when he was satisfied, and the roar of tigers and leopards could be faintly heard. At this moment, he smashed down with both hammers. All of a sudden, a tiger and a leopard rushed out from the Tiangong Disha hammer. Of course it was not real, it was just a kind of breath, but even the breath was already terrifying. The origin of the Tiangong Disha double hammers is actually not simple. The reason is that there are two fierce beasts in the double hammers. Report. 92%. Chapter 117. Defeating Zhou Cheng. This one is Tyrannosaurus Rex and the other is Lightning Leopard. These two beasts are not ordinary tigers and leopards. At the beginning, it was a disaster to the village, and many people were harmed. Later, the imperial court dispatched experts, but the two beasts still could not be subdued. Knowing that the Xiao family dispatched an expert, this matter was settled. Because it is a ferocious beast, this ferocious beast has an evil spirit. The evil spirit of this ferocious beast has been refined and integrated into the Tiangong hammer and Disha hammer respectively. As long as the power is activated, this fierce beast can be summoned as a killer move to attack. At this moment, when many timid people saw this scene, they were so frightened that they wanted to pee their pants. It was really too scary. Little bastard, if you kneel with me now, I don't have to kill you for the sake of our clan. This is his killer move. He has used this move to kill many masters who are stronger than him. He knows how powerful it is. Cut. The two dead beasts are just souls. Do you think I'm afraid of them? Suzy sneered again and again, showing no sign of fear at all. Little beast, if there is a way to heaven, if you don't go, if there is no way to hell, then you will go to die. At this time, the double hammers in his hand swung up and smashed at Suzy. One tiger and one leopard opened their bloody mouths and rushed towards Suzy. The surrounding atmosphere was constantly fluctuating, and many people closed their eyes. Draw your sword, kill me. At this time, Suzy's voice revealed a hint of coldness, his body split into two instantly, and the long sword in his hand shot out quickly. Shish. Accompanied by two shocking sword chi, they split a tiger and a leopard from the middle abruptly. The Tyrannosaurus tiger and lightning leopard let out a sharp roar and screamed in pain, although the body will not really be split, but everyone can see that the light has dimmed a lot at that moment. This is the sword swipe in Legendary. This sword energy can actually cause damage to the soul of the beast. At this moment, many people were shocked. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they really couldn't believe it. Zhou Nan was completely stunned. He had seen the sword drawing technique before, but he hadn't seen it so powerful. There was a bit of resentment in his eyes, and even more jealousy. He was not reconciled to why this happened. Many old people were stunned. It is said that drawing swordsmanship was the unique skill of the first emperor of the Great Zhou dynasty, but no one learned it. This guy actually mastered it, and it was so terrifying. It seems that Zhou Cheng wants to win, but there is no moment. Zhou Cheng's face was very ugly at this time. The tiger and leopard had already returned to his Tiangongdisha hammer. At this time he obviously felt that the aura contained in his double hammer was much weaker and much weaker. He knew that this was Suzi's double hammer on him. The tiger and leopard caused heavy damage, which made him feel a great shame. Originally, it seemed to him that he could kill this trash with one move, but now he is still alive and well. What shocked him even more was the sword drawing technique. He had seen this kind of sword technique before, but when he saw the practice he just gave up on the condition. Chang'er, don't show mercy. Concubine Xiao Gui's face turned cold. He was already very angry that his son, the proud son of heaven, who had gathered all kinds of obedience and love, had been wrestling with this trash for so long. Mother, don't worry, my son will abolish him now. At this time, Zhou Cheng mobilized the huge breath in his body to enter the double hammers, and the double hammers emitted a huge breath again. At that moment, the roar of tigers and leopards sounded again, and the surrounding air seemed to be frozen. Little bastard, you can die with peace of mind if you have such a record. Aside from bragging, what else can you do? HMPH, then go to hell, Sky Thunder Hammer. As soon as he finished speaking, his two hammers collided violently, and lightning arcs flowed between the two hammers. To say that this day's Thunder Hammer, as the name suggests, is like the gods getting angry and sending down thunder disasters. It is said that it was founded by the ancestors of the Xiao family, and its power is very powerful and domineering. This week, Cheng's cultivation base was already terrifying, reaching the middle stage of foundation establishment, and now he has used the Sky Thunder Hammer. His strength is actually close to the late stage of foundation establishment. It made it very clear that Suzi would be crippled by his hammer even if he didn't die this time. But the result didn't seem to be what he thought. The long sword in this guy's hand had already transformed into countless hard lines in an instant. Although the sword drawing technique seems to be only one move, in fact he is in front of Wanhua. At this moment, what he displayed was the second move of the sword drawing technique, the hammer breaking posture. The sword drawing technique is divided into 9 moves, and each move has 60 moves, so this sword move is ever changing. The second move of the sword drawing technique is the breaking hammer style. He knew Zhou Cheng's weapon before, so he learned this move specially. Did the long sword make a humming sound? The sword light kept swaying away, and the surrounding floor was swept up by the sword energy again, making it difficult for people to see clearly what was going on inside. When the hammer breaker was used, all the attacking routes of the opponent were blocked in an instant. At this time, he had a feeling that as long as he attacked, the price would be to sacrifice a hand, or even move his head. Everyone is very nervous at this time. They know that this is the most important moment, and all the results will be announced soon. The strange thing is that there is no sound of collision, but the sound of two people constantly moving their bodies, which makes people feel really incredible. After a while, the final battle stage calmed down, and a gust of wind blew past. At this moment, everyone was stunned, because at this time, everyone saw Suzi standing pretty like a javelin. But in front of him, there was a man, but this man was much more embarrassed. He was kneeling on the ground, blood was spurting out of his mouth, and his hammers had already fallen more than 10 meters away. The result is obvious. Suzi won, but this so-called genius among geniuses has already lost at this time, and the defeat was a complete mess. The entire management platform was boiling at this time, and everyone couldn't believe what they saw with their own eyes. This useless prince actually won, defeated the Weisai doctor of the Great Zhou dynasty. At this moment, Suzi exuded a powerful aura from all over his body, which made people dare not look directly at him. Wow, Suzi really won. At this time, Yang Zuqing was so excited that he was about to dance. He was really incomparably cheerful. Only at this time did he realize that he hadn't taken that heart-eating pill at all before, but he didn't expect that his big brother would be so powerful that even Zhou Cheng, who was so powerful, would be defeated by him. Zhou Nan felt a little uncomfortable at this time. He really didn't expect that this imprisoned boy could be so powerful now, and these geniuses with abundant resources are not as good as him, which is a bit ironic. Zhao Wan's mood was very low at this time. He didn't expect you, a waste, to be so powerful now. This time, Suzy definitely turned around. He wondered if he was wrong. Now he knew that this man not only had better kung fu, but also a more calm and unfathomable mind. Before he thought he was able to see him clearly enough, only now did he realize that he couldn't understand him at all. But soon the woman sneered. Quote, ... So what if you are strong? Can you be the opponent of the young lord of the Divine Sword sect? Speaking of Shengyanzong, it is very famous in the Great Zhou dynasty. The Divine Sword Zong controls the lifeblood of the Great Zhou dynasty. Some people say that the Great Zhou dynasty was actually established by relying on the Divine Sword Zong. The young patriarch of the Divine Sword sect, Mu Kanglang, could definitely be called a genius boy in the entire Great Zhou dynasty. It is said that he has mastered the Bingshuan Jin and can freeze seedlings with 10 waves of his hands. By chance, he met this young suzerain once, and the young suzerain naturally had feelings of admiration for him, but because he was Zhou Cheng's fiancé, he didn't say anything about it. At this moment, Zhou Cheng's face was still calm, and he said lightly, Zhou Cheng, you lost. No, I didn't lose, how could I lose? At this moment, Zhou Cheng was absolutely as if he had been struck by lightning. He definitely couldn't accept it. Zhou Cheng had been carrying the title of genius all these years. But now this piece of trash, a piece of trash that he had stepped on countless times, and whose dantian had been crippled by him, actually defeated him in front of everyone. HMPH, do you really want to force me to beat you until you don't even have the qualifications to kneel before you admit defeat? I won't lose, I'm not reconciled, you little bastard, go to hell. At this time, Zhou Cheng's eyes showed a fierce light. At this moment for good Zhao he was already desperate, and he wanted this little beast to die. At this moment, he jumped up directly, intending to kill Zhou Cheng. Of course, now he is actually at the end of his strength. Compared with Suzy, the gap is not a little bit. You wanna die? Suzy snorted coldly, and the Nirvana sword in his hand slapped him on the cheek fiercely with the blade of the sword. This slap made his head humming. The whole body flew upside down, like a kite with a broken string, and smashed into the ruins pit. And Suzy's body appeared in front of him in an instant. He raised his foot and kicked his chest more than a dozen times in an instant, and there were bursts of popping sounds. It was obvious that his whole body had been trampled and broken, blood was constantly spraying out, and there were bits of internal organs in it. Chunger. At this time, the imperial concubine above the main hall couldn't stand it any longer, shouted loudly, and rushed down. An erupting old man next to him also rushed down quickly, and pushed Suzy away with a palm. Suzy retreated a dozen steps backwards to stabilize his body. Old Xiao, how is it? Is he all right? Concubine Xiao was about to vomit blood. He felt that he was careful enough, but unexpectedly there was an accident. Seeing his son's appearance, he was really flustered. This picture is kind of scary. Report, 93%. Chapter 118. The Powerful King of Guangnan. Not good, concubine, this situation is a bit complicated. The muscles and veins of the whole body were directly shattered, and the dantian was also shattered by the sword energy. I'm afraid I can't practice anymore. The white-haired old man's expression was a little ugly at this time. Zhou Cheng is not only concubine Xiao's son, but also his apprentice, his most beloved apprentice, the apprentice he most favors, but now this apprentice has fallen into this virtue. What did you say? Scrap. Concubine Xiao Gui's eyes went dark. She almost fainted. She sat down on the ground. Her face was extremely ugly. Everyone present was shocked and took a deep breath. This is definitely revenge. Revenge for Zhou Cheng's abolition of his dantian. Little bastard, you really dared to touch my son. Xiao Lao chopped off his hands and feet and made him into a human pig. The anger in concubine Xiao Gui's heart at this time had already reached the point where it seemed to be real. He forced herself to stand up at this time. The expression on his face was very ferocious. The cross always affects the expression on his face and twitches. Xiao Lao stood up and was about to make a move when Guangnan Wang said lightly, Xiao Tianzhan, try to move him. The voice was very flat, but it was full of an unquestionable aura. It felt like the voice of a god. Xiao Tianzhan was that old Xiao just now, and he was also a little surprised at this moment. At that moment, King Guangnan's body had already appeared beside Suzy. No one saw how he moved. It felt very strange, as if they didn't see his moving steps, but his body had already appeared beside Suzy. In front of Z. King Guangnan was already very tall. At this moment he appeared in front of him like a Mount Tai, and the aura emanating from his whole body was very powerful, even exuding an unparalleled domineering aura. At this time, many people will have an illusion that standing on the ring is not a single person, but a 113th army. The strong feeling of coercion makes them dare not look at it. The king of Guangnan was the elder of the Great Zhou dynasty. Once there was a rebellion in the Great Zhou dynasty. The king of Guangnan dispatched the Shen's army to rebel. Later, he took command of the Nanyang area to ensure peace. But King Guangnan seldom interfered with the affairs of the court, so many people thought that he might be a person who only knows how to fight. But this time Guangnan king will actually help Su Zi, which many people did not expect. King Guangnan, do you want to protect this little bastard? Concubine Xiao Gui stared at King Guangnan with cold eyes, and there was deep resentment in her eyes. I can't talk about protecting you, but if the old man Xiao wants to make a move, then I definitely can't understand it. Your son was defeated by Su Zi in a dignified manner. You let Xiao Tianzhan make a move. What do you mean? Ha ha ha, King Guangnan, I think you are old and confused. My son is about to be established as the crown prince, the future prince of the Great Zhou dynasty. What kind of a dog is Su Zi, a bastard of an enemy spy? If it weren't for the blood of my son of heaven still flowing in the blood, do you think this beast can live till now? Now this disobedient beast dares to injure my son. Damn it, what are you waiting for, Mr. Xiao? This beast will be chopped into a pig for me. At this time, concubine Xiao Gui was already furious, her eyes were full of viciousness. Good. Mr. Xiao was already ready to make a move at this time, when a sword chi appeared between the palms of his right hand, which actually formed a stellar chi sword. When they saw this stellar chi sword, they all gasped. This means that when the strength has reached this strength, it is estimated that he is no longer distracted, and should have entered the realm of Yaksu, which is a brand new level. In fact, there are not many Yaksu realms in the entire Great Zhou dynasty. It is difficult for ordinary people to continue to practice after reaching the peak of the foundation stage, and it is very difficult to break through and enter the Yaksu realm during the concentration stage. Many people are stuck in the early stage of calming their minds all their lives, so it is conceivable that Xiao Tianzhan is not easy. Xiao Tianzhan, I heard that you have entered the realm of Yaksu, why don't I play with you? At this time, King Guangnan sneered, and the momentum on his body exploded again. This time it was like a galloping army, that kind of huge momentum even threw all the surrounding stones to Junfei. At that moment, Xiao Tianzhan's body was sent flying for more than 10 steps, and a mouthful of blood was swallowed by him just as he was about to spurt out. Gulu. The others couldn't help but take a breath at this time. The strength of Xiao Tianzhan is actually self-directed. He is a master of the Xiao family, a very powerful existence, but in front of this king of Guangnan, King Guangnan couldn't stop his aura. In fact, very few people know the strength of Guangnan King. Many people only know that Guangnan King is very powerful in fighting, but being very powerful in fighting does not necessarily mean that his force value is very strong. There are two kinds of talents in the barracks of the Great Zhou dynasty. One kind of talents is called master think tanks. The strength of masters of this level is very average. They are all strategizing and decisively winning thousands of miles away. Because King Guangnan was rarely in the court, and he swept away people who had seen him fight, many people even thought that he, the god of war, was just a brain trustee, but I just found out that this overlord is so terrifying. You, what realm are you? Xiao Tianzhan said tremblingly at this time. He didn't expect that he would be directly sent flying by the opponent with a powerful momentum, he just felt like he was caught in the massacre of thousands of troops, that feeling was completely out of control. HMPH, it's easy to kill you, your king, who dares to hurt my nephew. A domineering look is actually just like the essence. The aura of this peerless strong man who once killed all directions and wasted his bones is actually not comparable to that of ordinary martial arts. King Guangnan, are you going to rebel? Somebody take him down for me, drag him out and hack him to death. Concubine Xiao Gui is already angry and a little reckless, he even feels that CGD himself is the only one here. However, concubine Xiao has been domineering all these years. Behind him is the Xiao family. The Xiao family is deeply rooted in the entire Great Zhou dynasty, so many people follow concubine Xiao. When concubine Xiao made a sound below zero, dozens of black shadows had already appeared near the decisive battle, and some masters also approached quickly. These strong men actually merged to form a tide. Although there were only dozens of people, by the time at that time, it felt like thousands of troops were overwhelmed, which made people feel frightened. But King Guangnan was not afraid at this time. He sneered, this god of war who has faced countless battles seems to be used to seeing the god of death. At this time, everyone gasped. The situation seemed to be getting out of control immediately. Could there be a war here today? Stop it all, do you think I'm just a show? At this time, the emperor, who had not spoken all this time, slowly stood up. After a word, his voice was like thunder. It was a majestic aura of anger from the gods and a domineering aura that contained the power of the superior. Poof. At that moment, everyone's energy and blood surged up, and those with low cultivation bases spurted blood wildly, and they just passed out directly. At that moment, many people finally knew what imperial power is, and this is the real imperial power. This momentum is not something they can look up to. Your Majesty, our son was beaten like this by this bastard. You can't just ignore it. This is your most beloved son. The concubine suggests making him a human pig, so as to make an example of him. HMPH. Zhou Cheng's skills are not as good as others, and besides, he fouled first. Shuaner acted completely helplessly. Don't you think it's too much for you to make him a human pig? His Majesty the Emperor said coldly. At this moment, concubine Xiao Gui's face changed. He didn't expect this to happen. In his opinion, it was impossible. Zhou Zhenshan knew that he was his real helper. So in his opinion, there is no reason for concubine Xiao not to help him, but what is going on now, he really can't understand this matter at this time. Why, don't you doubt my judgment? No, dare not, my concubine dare not. Concubine Xiao Gui's face was very ugly. He really didn't dare to say anything at this time. Don't look at him, usually arrogant and domineering. He doesn't take anyone seriously, but the one in front of him is the lord of the great Zhou dynasty. He dare not disobey. HMPH. Pay attention to the occasion when you speak. How can I make you the mother of a country and turn people into human beings every now and then? Is it fun? Concubine Xiao was so frightened this time that she trembled even more. He was indeed out of control because of his son's injury before, but now that he thought about it, he was really too stupid. Even if he wanted to take revenge, he shouldn't be here. The Emperor and my concubines know they are wrong. The Emperor ignored him, but looked at his son Su Zi. He didn't expect that the former prince is so strong now, not only powerful, but also very calm in mind. Maybe it really came true to the saying, Bao Jianfeng comes from sharpening, plum blossoms come from bitter cold, suffering may be the best whetstone for my son. Shuaner, according to the previous agreement, you have already won the game. I don't know what you want, but the Emperor can satisfy you. This time the Emperor's tone of speech changed, it was very soft, and there was a gentle smile. In fact, he was impressed by the performance of his eldest son. Looking at his father, at that moment, there was still a warm current in his heart. After being trapped on the cliff for these years, he was really very desolate. After his mother died, he was even more lonely. So for him, he actually still hopes to have a relative, so at this time the Emperor's words made him feel warm in his heart. Father, you can really do anything. You are not joking. Father, my wish is that you can reinvestigate the matter of your mother destroying the cemetery and the tombstone. Report. 93%. Chapter 119. Observation. In fact, Su Zi didn't want to talk about this matter at first, because his uncle said that his father knew about this matter, but he still chose to make mistakes for his own benefit. But Su Zi couldn't hold back. His mother complained for 5 years and was scolded for 5 years. Now they still want to use her mother's grave as an altar. Su Zi really doesn't want to wait. If he really wants to become emperor, how can he be so quick? Su Zi's words shocked many people. The fact that Qin Ji destroyed the cemetery and the tombstone back then is well documented, and now Su Zi wants to reverse the case. This is too crazy. Reversal. The emperor is a little curious. Little beast, it turns out that you went around for that spy. HMPH. Qin Ji destroyed the cemetery back then, but many people saw it. You saw it yourself, little beast. Why is there blood like that of the moon-worshipping kingdom in your body? Don't you even want your ancestors? Xiao Gaifei said angrily. HMPH, that's just using a Taoist technique to control my mother. Father, my mother was controlled by a kind of puppet technique, but it was beyond his control. Father also asked, you can see. Su Zi looked at Xiao Gaifei at the side with stern eyes, and the hatred in his eyes skyrocketed again. That kind of hatred made people panic when they looked at it. Father, the person who killed my mother back then was none other than concubine Xiao Gui. All of a sudden, the entire viewing platform was about to explode, which absolutely stunned everyone. In fact, many people know about puppetry. Puppetry originally belonged to the Meizu. Because their skills are too evil, people from the Meizu have been unable to enter the great Zhou dynasty. Now it is told that concubine Xiao Gui used the charm technique to frame Qin Ji, a empress of high virtue. If this is true, then she will be punished. Many people looked at this woman, it was a kind of interrogating gaze. The expression on concubine Xiao Gui's face changed again. He naturally knew that this matter cannot be admitted. Although the Xiao family is very powerful and intricate, Some things should not be too superficial, just like it was impossible for him to kill Qinji, and then become the queen himself. Even if Qinji died, he is still not the queen. Little bastard, don't be fooled by your gossip. There are gods standing 3 feet above your head. Are you not afraid of being struck by lightning if you chew your tongue? Your Majesty, don't trust this little bastard. As we all know, puppetry requires a person's birth date and hair, and in the Great Zhou dynasty, everyone's birth date cannot be disclosed to the public. Back then, concubine Xiao asked one of your court ladies to ask my mother's birth date. Don't you admit it? You talk nonsense. Don't admit it, then I'll ask you about the maid named Shonger next to you. Has he gone out to get married? Marrying? I think you killed him. The imperial father's maid from Shonger came over and said that you wanted your mother's birthday horoscope, and then you wanted to make a talisman for her. My mother gave it to him without thinking too much about it. Quote. His Majesty the Emperor was a little surprised. He really hadn't seen that maid named Shonger before. HMPH, what a joke, just because of a missing court lady. You suspect that it's my concubine, aren't you too naive? Suzy was speechless for a while. In fact, Suzy originally meant to let the Emperor re-investigate. If he had evidence, why did this happen? But I didn't expect concubine Xiao Gui to be so aggressive. Of course not, this king still has evidence, come and bring me here. Just when Suzy didn't know how to answer, Guangnan Wangzhou bombing suddenly said. Suzy was a little surprised. He originally thought that the king of Guangnan would oppose him, because he said before that now is not the time, but now he will help him. At this moment, 2 guards came up with an old man. The old man looked a little scary. His whole body was skinny, even greens, as if he had been poisoned. The hair on the head is all green, and the nose is gone, which looks really scary. King Guangnan, what do you mean by bringing such a monster up here? Seeing this ugly monster, concubine Xiao almost vomited out. Come on, blow him away, can you afford to startle Long Yan? Hee, concubine Xiao, you want to drive him away so much, why do you know who he is, or are you out of your mind? King Guangnan sneered. This gave concubine Xiao some bad premonition. He looked at the ugly monster carefully, and said. Don't play tricks here, how can I know such an ugly monster? Guangnan Wang sneered and said immediately. Say hello to your master. This ugly monster looked at concubine Xiao Gui, and said immediately. Imperial concubine, don't you really not remember? When I heard this somewhat hoarse voice, I also took a deep breath in my heart. You, who are you, who are you? Hey, imperial concubine, my servant Xiao Shunzi pays my respects to you. After the man finished speaking, he made a gesture of greeting, but this weird scene really made people feel very frightening. No, it's impossible, aren't you already dead? This time concubine Xiao's arrogance just now disappeared, and turned into panic, which is unbelievable. Cough cough. Your concubine, this may be because this old servant is too hard, even a little red in the Central Plains can't be poisoned to death. Hey, I really miss the old concubine who specially prepared it for me in order to reward me. Put the lotus seed soup with a little red from the Central Plains, the stamina is really good, really good. It leaves a fragrance on the lips and teeth. The man said sadly. Concubine Xiao Gui was already sweating profusely at this time. He actually didn't know how to explain this man's appearance, his expression changed again and again. In fact, everyone is a smart person. Seeing concubine Xiao's expression, they probably guessed something. Who are you? The emperor asked coldly at this time, his voice filled with an aura of coercion. My Majesty, the servant's name is Xiao Deshan, and his nickname is Xiao Shunzi. Xiao Shunzi knelt down at this time, and then said in trepidation. Xiao Shunzi, you are the eunuch Xiao Shunzi who was next to concubine Xiao back then. The emperor knew that concubine Xiao had a eunuch when she first entered the palace, but later the eunuch disappeared, and he didn't know what happened. You are really Xiao Shunzi. I remember that you were originally white and clean. How could you be like this? Hi, Your Majesty, have you ever heard of a little red in the Central Plains? Of course I have heard that Zongyuan Dianhong is a very powerful poison, and there is basically no cure for this poison. Zongyuan Dianhong is a very strong poison of the Great Zhou dynasty. After eating it, the whole body is like burning, starting from the internal organs, and finally turning into a puddle of blood. This poison is very powerful, and there is no antidote. The slave has a special constitution since he was a child, and he is invulnerable to all poisons. Back then, the old slave helped concubine Xiao Gui to do something. He thought that only the dead can keep the secret, so he put a little red from the Central Plains in the lotus seed soup, and then tricked me into eating it, killing me to silence it. Xiao Shunzi was very angry. His hatred for concubine Xiao Gui reached the bone marrow. I'm sorry, because the slave's physical fitness is different from that of ordinary people, so it didn't directly kill him, but Zongyuan Yidianhong is too strong, even my constitution, it still almost died, and then the slave forced out some of the poison, the result became what it is now. At this time, the big guys were all stunned, and they couldn't imagine that Xiao Gaifei, a beauty, would be so vicious. This statement is true. When His Majesty finished speaking, a phantom of a real dragon appeared behind him. The majestic aura of the king's dominance made people dare not look directly at it. Report to your majesty, if you don't lie. Brother Huang, this is true. I always thought the case back then was strange. Later, I accidentally found Xiao Shunzi at the border. However, Xiao Shunzi was seriously injured at the beginning. After 3 years of treatment, he was finally saved. Return. There was a deathly silence at the scene. Everyone was obviously stunned. The amount of information was too much. Concubine Xiao Gui, won't you explain this matter to me? At this time, His Majesty the Emperor said coldly, without any emotion in his voice, but it seemed that the surrounding temperature had dropped by more than 10 degrees, making people feel chills all over. Obviously, His Majesty the Emperor was angry this time, and this kind of anger was not feigned, which made Suzy very curious. According to what his uncle said, the Emperor father should know about it, but it didn't look like it was feigned. Your Majesty, my concubines are wronged. These people are jealous of their concubines being able to get the Emperor's favor. They are jealous that their concubines' sons are geniuses. Their concubines chant scriptures every day, eat fast and chant Buddha. How could they be such people? They are slandering, it was framed. At this time, concubine Xiao Gui said that she seemed very pitiful. But he is also really afraid. A country doesn't mean that if you are powerful, you can be really lawless. Even the emperor can't mess around. Then it is not so simple, let alone being a queen, even if she wants to continue to be a noble concubine, it will be difficult, after all, it is a leisurely mouth. Your Majesty, there is evidence. At this time, he quickly tore off his clothes, and there was a peach blossom on his chest. This is the special symbol of Maizu. Many people know that this is called peach blossom tribulation. Maizu people practice charm and will produce peach blossom tribulation. Also, this is the talisman used in puppetry. Here is the birth date of Empress Qin. This date of birth was tricked by concubine Xiao, a court lady. There is also hair here, which belonged to Empress Qin before she was alive. It was concubine Xiao who let the servants use it. This kind of Taoism controlled the queen's body, and then did those things. In fact, he was unconscious of those things. At this time, he explained seriously. At this time, everyone understood that concubine Xiao Gui was actually so vicious and vicious, which really made people feel unbelievable. Report, 93%. Chapter 120. The truth comes out. In fact, even Suzy was very surprised at this time. He really didn't expect that concubine Xiao Gui was so ruthless. Concubine Xiao, don't you have anything to say? The emperor said something lightly, his voice filled with an incomparably majestic aura. Concubine Xiao's face is ashen. It is unnecessary to argue at this time, because no one will believe his words. The evidence is conclusive, it is already ironclad. Your Majesty, my concubine. Okay, needless to say, as a concubine, you actually framed the queen in such a despicable way. Someone put this woman in prison for me. The emperor was really angry this time. His voice was full of cold determination. Promise. Several guards came up and were about to go down as concubine Xiao, but concubine Xiao waved her hands away. Let go, I will decide for myself. At this moment, concubine Xiao Gui's body is cold, and she feels that her worldview is collapsing. He really didn't expect to be put into the sky prison. Can that place be kept? Little bastard, don't get complacent too early. Do you think you can handle me like this? The Xiao family will not let you go, you will pay a heavy price. At this time, concubine Xiao Gui was like a shrew. She looked at Suzy with resentment, and said angrily. Suzy naturally turned a deaf ear to his threat. Concubine Xiao yelled and cursed while being dragged away, and finally could not hear his voice again. At this time, Suzy knelt on the ground with a plop, kowtowed to the west and said, Mother, have you seen that the baby has finally cleared up your grievances for you, and this damn thing has also been punished? You can rest in peace under Juquan. Suzy knew that his mother was kind by nature, and he didn't want him to avenge him, but Suzy felt that it was normal for good people to be rewarded for good and evil for evil. Zhou Zhenshin looked at Suzy's stubborn face, and sighed softly. He knew how much hatred this good boy had been carrying all these years, and how miserable he was being tricked by Zhou Cheng and those people. Now that he is able to grow up, it's really not easy. Zhan, you have been wronged all these years. The emperor patted his shoulder and said softly. At this time, the emperor glanced at those civil and military officials, with a playful smile on the corner of his mouth. A large part of these people were dead-faced in the past, saying that Qinji was a disaster for the country and the people. Now it seems that these people are also accomplices. These people also obviously felt the unfriendliness in this gaze, and they were all sweating in fright, and a few timid ones sat on the ground. These people know that concubine Xiao Gui has been arrested now, and their minions are also in bad luck. Now that the truth has become clear, I declare that my eldest son Suzi has regained his crown prince status, and his mother, Empress Qinji, will be added as Empress Wendy to enter the imperial mausoleum and use jade to build a Wendy stele. The emperor is holy. Long live my emperor, long live, long live. Many people were astonished. They really didn't expect Qinji to get such a posthumous title, which is very uncommon. Thank you, father. Suzi finally heaved a sigh of relief. He didn't care about the glory and wealth, he just couldn't swallow that breath. Now that this suffocating breath has been swallowed, he feels that he doesn't want anything. Shuaner, come and sit down. At this moment, the emperor pulled Suzi down to sit beside him, and the others looked shocked again. This time the martial arts competition is really too bloody. What is this salted fish turned over? This is definitely a textbook level record. The Zhao family really lost their bet this time. Yes, this Zhao family is really blind. Throw away the watermelon and pick up the sesame seeds. Now who is a waste and who is a genius? What an irony. Zhao Wan was really uncomfortable at this time. He felt like he had eaten shit. It was really uncomfortable. However, the woman still comforted herself. He felt that her husband would be the strongest in the world in the future. Suzi, let's wait and see. Zhao Wan is still very arrogant. After the contest ended, Suzi once again became the focus of the entire Great Zhou dynasty. This is definitely a textbook turnaround. And Huang contrasted his actions very quickly. On the second day, he began to quarrel and exterminate all those who had once looked dead in front of him. These accomplices who had harmed the Qin family basically paid a heavy price. But Suzi's mother's mother was moved into the imperial mausoleum, and then buried with glory. After the end of this martial arts competition, Suzi's hard life has come to an end. He has already moved into the East Palace. After all, he is the prince, so naturally he lives in the East Palace, and the east side is the largest, so Yinzi usually lives in the East Palace. At this time, Suzi proposed to his father that he wanted to live in Wenji Palace. There are his own memories there, and the environment of Wenji Palace is quiet. He doesn't like living in too noisy places now. In recent years, my mother's residence has been regarded as an unknown place, and no one has lived there. When Suzi came to Wenji Hall, what surprised him was that the place was cleaned up. It didn't look deserted at all, and some of his mother's favorite flowers and plants were even planted here. Suzi even wondered if his mother had never left. Looking at this familiar environment, his eyes were red at that moment. Later, I found out what happened after asking a few maids. It turned out that my father asked the maids to clean and take care of this place every day, and no one was allowed to destroy it. At this time, Suzi actually couldn't figure it out. What his uncle said, his father was wrong for the sake of rights, even naming his mother, so he still killed his mother, but now he looks at it, and feels that this matter may not be what he thought. Has my father come here? Well, the emperor often comes here. Every time he is unhappy or it is the queen's birthday or death day, he will come here for a long time, and even got drunk several times. A court lady said softly. Her voice was extremely respectful. Now Suzi is already very famous, and this is the dream lover of many people. Today's Suzi is a legendary boy in the Great Zhou dynasty. Suzi nodded, thoughtful. Maybe both himself and uncle wrongly blamed the father. The father is not the kind of heartless person. Suzi remembered that your mother told you not to blame your father no matter what happens in the future. Looking at it now, maybe even the father has a lot of helplessness. Although the father was the emperor of the 9th five-year plan, he had just ascended the throne not long ago, internally and externally unstable. His mother was forced to death by those careerists and concubine Xiao. Even if the father knew, maybe he was very unreliable. He can only come here to drink, come here to tell the bitterness in his heart. Suzi, congratulations, I told you that you are the real Long Tian. Yes, this is the Mingjun of the future. Concubine Xiao Gui and Zhou Cheng deserved what they deserved. Those kind of damn scumbags are finally being punished. In the next few days, the entire Wenji Palace was extremely lively, and there was an endless stream of visitors. Those harem concubines and other princes who had ridiculed and abused all began to come and talk to each other. And these people sent a lot of good things. Some are 1,000-year-old ginseng, some are human-shaped fleece flower root, and some very precious gold and silver jewelry. Suzy did not refuse anyone who came. Anyway, these people gave them by themselves, why didn't they accept them? Suzy understood a truth. These people were just scumbags, so he took care of them. And these days, the number of people who came to visit kept increasing. At first they were from the harem, and later they were the princes and ministers and many big families of the Zhou dynasty. After all, they all knew that this was the future emperor. The entire Wenji hall couldn't stand any more. This is really ironic. Suzy looked at these things and couldn't help laughing at himself. No wonder concubine Xiao is so keen on these things. Once you have this power and status, there will be countless people like this to curry favor with you. It makes you walk on clouds, but Suzy has gone through ups and downs. Of course not, Prince. The emperor summoned. A eunuch came over and said hastily, "What does the emperor want me to do? I heard that King Guangnan was injured." The eunuch said softly. What's going on? Why did King Guangnan get injured suddenly when he was fine before? Suzy knew that after his uncle's previous affairs were resolved, he returned to his own residence. How could he be injured with such a powerful cultivation base? Lead the way ahead, let's go to the palace now. Suzy was worried about his uncle's situation, so he hurried away from the pile. Soon Suzy came to Chengkan Palace, which is the emperor's palace. At this time, Suzy saw King Guangnan lying on his father's bed. His body had been bandaged in many places, and his face was pale. Now there is an imperial physician to help acupuncture with him. Uncle, what's wrong with you? Suzy was really surprised. How could his uncle be injured when his cultivation base is 5.6? Shuaner, are you here? At this time, King Guangnan saw Suzy and smiled. It's okay, just a few minor injuries. Uncle, who did it? Suzy's voice was cold, and hatred surged in his eyes. He vowed to make these people pay the price. King Guangnan helped his mother frequently and brought down concubine Xiao Gui. He was his benefactor, but now he was beaten like this. Suzy was furious. Don't ask, Shuaner, the most important thing for you now is to practice hard. King Guangnan said softly. Is it the Xiao family? Suzy also knows that the Xiao family is intricate and has many masters. Neither the emperor nor the king of Nan spoke, which was obviously a tacit agreement. The Xiao family, a heaven-defying family, this family is the ancient martial arts family that existed since the founding of the great Zhou dynasty. Uncle, is it because of concubine Xiao? At this time, Suzy's eyes showed a glint of coldness. The reason why concubine Xiao was arrogant and domineering was because she relied on the Xiao family, otherwise his arrogant character would have been killed long ago. Report, 93%. Chapter 121. Conclusive evidence. Shuaner, your guess is right, it's because of this matter. At this time, the emperor sighed helplessly. The Xiao family behind concubine Xiao was already very powerful, and concubine Xiao had solid evidence this time. The main reason why concubine Xiao was thrown into the prison was because of the testimony of King Guangnan. So this time Guangnan King naturally encountered their resentment. Just when King Guangnan returned to the territory, before he returned to the station, he was ambushed by the 10 black-clothed killers of the Xiao family. Although King Guangnan was very strong and killed all those killers, he himself suffered heavy injuries and almost lost his life. Shuaner, you have to be careful recently. The real purpose of these people is not me, but to attack you, but now that you are the prince, they don't dare to go too far, but after the new year, when the dragon slaying take action, those people from the Xiao family will definitely deal with you. Suzy nodded. He knew that the dragon slaying operation was a custom passed down by the great Zhou dynasty for thousands of years. Every year on the first day of the new year, an abnormal dragon slaying operation would be held. In the Warcraft Mountains outside the city of the great Zhou dynasty, it is said that there are dragon monsters. Every year on the first day of the new year, a team will enter, and whoever can hunt and kill the dragon beast will get the highest honor. Of course, this legendary is legendary after all, because until now no one has seen the so-called dragon Warcraft integration thing. In fact, many people think it is just legendary. According to the regulations, this dragon slaying operation is no longer really about slaying dragons, but has become a stage for competition, which is also similar to a selection and affirmation of ability. Participating in this action is the stage of the juniors of the major families and the royal family. If they perform well on this stage, some 29 can be reused directly in the court, and they will be famous for thousands of miles. Now that Suzy is the prince, what he represents is actually the royal family. If he doesn't participate, the royal family will have no face to lead the party. This is a natural thing. Uncle, don't worry, these clowns, I must let them know what the price is, and I will turn them into bereaved dogs by slaying the dragon. Naturally, Suzy would avenge his uncle's hatred. Little Schwanzi, think about it simply. Although the Xiao family has been very arrogant in the Great Zhou dynasty these years, there is one thing I have to admit. They have the capital to be arrogant, and there are indeed a lot of masters among them. I remember that the Xiao family has one as Xiao Kangtian. This person is not very old, but he has already reached the late stage of concentration. You are only in the early stage of foundation establishment. That's right, Shuaner, you don't know something. In fact, the most serious injury on your uncle's body was caused by this chasing wind fox arrow named Xiao Kangtian. The emperor then pointed to a wound on King Guangnan's body. The location was very close to the throat, and he was almost able to kill him. Shuaner, Xiao Kangtian is definitely not simple. Uncle, I have experienced many battles. If I didn't react fast enough, I would have been killed by that kid this time. King Guangnan sighed, thinking about the smile that young man gave him at that time. He felt a little cold all over his body now, and that young man was so deep that it made people feel that he couldn't see the bottom at a glance. There are still 3 months before the dragon slaying tour, and he will definitely participate when the time comes, so you must not confront him head on. Although Su Zi developed very fast, after 5 years of disuse, he still has no way to be able to match a genius like Xiao Kangtian all at once. Su Zi's face was gloomy and terrifying. The name Xiao Kangtian had been deeply remembered by him. This damned guy dared to ruthlessly attack his uncle. He would definitely not let him go. Father, why not take action against the Xiao family this time? After leaving the room, Su Zi was also a little curious. He dared to ambush the emperor's younger brother, who belonged to the Zhu clan. Everything needs evidence. Although those people were killed by your master, they all ruined their faces, and the location they chose is very hidden. Even if the father blames it, do you think they will admit it? The emperor also shook his head helplessly. In fact, he knew very well that these people were not so easy to deal with. If they were so easy to deal with, they wouldn't be so intertwined. The Xiao family is a real big family. Like the Great Zhou dynasty, it has been in existence for thousands of years, and its power is intertwined. There are people from them in all positions in the entire celestial dynasty. I moved concubine Xiao because I caught the little braid, but moved the Xiao family, this matter is complicated. Su Zi nodded. In fact, he also knew that the Xiao family was not simple, and there was a reason why concubine Xiao was so arrogant and domineering. Go. Father will take you somewhere. Where are you going? You won the first place this time, so the emperor will naturally reward you and take you to the dragon's diverticulum. Su Zi was overjoyed. He knew that the dragon's diverticulum was very unusual. Practicing in it is of great benefit to improving one's own strength. After leaving with their father, they quickly passed through one palace after another. After more than an hour, they entered a small room. There were 4 great beasts around this room, namely the green dragon and white tiger, the tortoise and phoenix. In the middle of the secret room, there is a piece of jade on the ground. This jade exudes a cold breath. Although the 4 great beasts are statues, they seem to be alive. Father, is this the dragon's diverticulum? Su Zi was a little surprised and said. Su Zi could clearly feel that the jade contained very pure energy at this time, and there were shadows of the 4 great beasts between the energy, which looked very mysterious. Well, in fact, the dragon's diverticulum is formed by gathering the energy of the earth veins and the treasures of the 4 great beasts. The energy here takes several years to form once. Your cultivation on it will have great benefits for stabilizing your foundation. Thank you, Father. Well, remember that the 2-sided aura is very powerful. You must be careful, absorbing too much will blow you up. Yes, Shah. Su Zi walked up slowly at this time, and when he came to the top of the jade, he suddenly felt a stream of pure energy continuously enter his body along his sweat pores. His whole body was like it is ultraviolet and inwardly washed. Su Zi was sitting cross-legged at this time, feeling the green dragon, white tiger, tortoise and phoenix constantly circling around his body, and he was shocked. His Majesty the Emperor watched from the sidelines, seeming a little surprised in his heart. I really didn't expect it. It's been a long time since there was a situation surrounded by 4 divine beasts. At this moment, 2 people slowly came out from the darkness. Their hair was gray. One of them said softly. It seems that I have met a real talent. It can even arouse the approval of the 4 gods and beasts at the same time. It seems that this time the dragon slaying operation, our royal family really has a chance to be proud. The other old man was also very excited at this time. In the Great Zhou dynasty, there were Xiao family, Zhao family and Shenjianzong, which were the superpowers of the dynasty. And every year in the dragon slaying operation, the champions are actually replaced by the Xiao family and the Excalibur sect in turn, and none of the disciples of the rich family have ever won. This matter is actually a disgrace to the royal family, and they have not taken the royal family seriously in recent years, and the disciples of the royal family have also been very tragic these years. Now that he actually saw Suzy in this situation, it was a hope that he could feel proud. The Emperor nodded. He naturally had this idea at this time. Just when Suzy absorbed it to a peak, there was a sound of dragon moaning suddenly around his body, and the dragon-shaped phantom began to condense on his body little by little, forming a real dragon. The next moment, the giant dragon poured directly into his body. And on the surface of his body, a layer of gold's aura kept rolling. The chi of the real dragon. It turned out to be the chi of the real dragon. An old man said very excitedly. Originally, after absorbing to an extreme point, in fact, he couldn't continue to absorb, but at that moment, the surroundings of his body started to absorb again. Others looked at 393 and thought it was too scary. One must know that being able to appear the aura of a real dragon is already a genius in the sky, but what one did not expect was that it could continue to cause the other three great beasts to want to recognize their master. Not good. The accumulated aura is not enough to recognize the master for the second time. The elders stopped the formation quickly. Several old men nodded. They shot at the same time almost at that moment, and then forcibly closed the formation first, otherwise it would be dangerous to recognize the master for the second time. The surrounding atmosphere began to dissipate. At this moment, Suzy exuded the aura of gold, and his whole body exuded countless astonishing gazes. At this moment, the Emperor laughed out loud, letting him know that he might really be developing. And at the same time, above the great Zhou dynasty, the color of the sky and the earth changed, and the clouds condensed continuously, forming a huge golden dragon. The picture was very shocking, and even more shocking. But at this moment, a huge black hand suddenly appeared in the clouds, and the black hand directly grabbed the gold dragon. Who dares to come here to be presumptuous? At this moment, His Majesty the Emperor was already exuding outrageous anger, and the gold light erupted from his body, and his whole body was like a golden light shooting up into the sky, directly smashing that huge black hand into pieces. At this time Suzy walked over slowly, opened his eyes and sucked in a breath of cold air. He could feel that his soul was almost torn apart by 10 breaths just now. The real dragon in the sky just now is actually connected with his soul. If he catches him, he will die. If it wasn't for the royal father's action just now, I guess I would really be dead. Where did the young people come here to assassinate you? Haven't you shown yourself yet? His Majesty's aura has not dissipated, and now he appeared in midair, and said majestically. He is very angry now. Someone dared to harm his son in front of him. He really was lawless and didn't take himself seriously. Report. 94%. Chapter 122. The Shao family's conspiracy. At this moment, there is no response around here. HMPH, a group of young people, do you think you dare to come to my palace to be demons because you hide in the dark? His Majesty the Emperor sneered, the shadow of the palm of his right hand fluttered, and he slapped it out. The next moment, a huge gold palm appeared in the air out of thin air, turning the entire sky into golden yellow. With a bang, Gold's palm unexpectedly crushed the clouds in the sky, and the next moment a black shadow was squeezed out. But it's a pity that the moment the body rushed out of the clouds, it was like a bomb, and it was blown to pieces. Explode yourself. Damn it, so ruthless. Many people were stunned at this time. This kind of self-destruction is not only cruel to the enemy, it is actually more cruel to oneself. You must know that this self-destruction does not even leave any scum. All officers and men obey the order, and the surrounding area is closely monitored, and no flies can fly in. You guys follow me. His Majesty's face was very ugly. He turned and left after speaking, and the old men in the dark also quickly left without a trace. Suzy continued to absorb this force at this time. He knew that under such circumstances, none of the 205 had the guts to assassinate him. The loss is still great. At this time, His Majesty the Emperor and several old men came to a room and sat down. His Majesty's face was so gloomy and terrifying. Tell me, who do you think sent this man to dare to assassinate in broad daylight? He really has the guts of a bear. Holy, this should be someone from the Shao family. In fact, the old man's strength just now has not yet reached the stage of self-destruction. He should use the Shao family's self-explosion formula, which is a cruel kung fu. That's right, only the Shao family's self-explosion formula can be so cruel and merciless. It seems that the Shao family has really become more and more arrogant. In fact, the Shao family has long been rebellious. After all, the Shao family has developed rapidly in recent years. There have been rumors that the Shao family intends to replace it. Now it seems that this is indeed the case. But, it seems that this group of white-eyed wolves are ready to start fighting. It's all because we have indulged them too much before. I really didn't expect Shanza and the others to be so arrogant and domineering. HMPH, these bastards, I want to see how long they can jump. The emperor suppressed the anger again, and then said, "This time the dragon slaying operation, I think the Shao family will definitely make a big move. In fact, I don't know the Shao family's wolf ambitions. It's just that they have been waiting for an opportunity to obey the destiny. If anyone rebels without a good opportunity and a good excuse, it is actually doomed to failure. Your Majesty, you mean that this time they will most likely want to use the dragon-slaying action to increase their momentum?" An old man said in surprise. HMPH, as long as they really can't catch the dragon, they can say that they are obeying the destiny. In fact, many people think that there are no dragons in the Warcraft Mountains, but in fact there are dragons. Your Majesty, you mean that there are really dragons appearing in the Warcraft Mountains? Well, in fact, the Shao family has been secretly having such a close relationship with the devil all these years. They thought they were doing it very covertly. In fact, I knew it long ago. They colluded with the devil and exchanged many virgin souls for some news about the Warcraft mountain range. If I guessed correctly, they already have my schedule and specific address. Hearing what the emperor said, His Majesty really felt something was wrong at this time. Not only that, they should have gotten the potion. What, potion? You mean the kind of medicine that, after taking it, the body can transform into a demon in a short time? These old people are not calm anymore. No wonder the Shao family is so arrogant. This potion is actually a kind of medicinal material refined by the demons using monsters. The demons have dealt with monsters all year round. After eating the potion, the body will be demonized. For example, if you eat the potion of a bear, not only will part of your body evolve into a bear beast in a short period of time, but the amount of it will also be very violent. Potions have always been listed as banned drugs because of their terrifying power. Your Majesty, if the potion can be found, then the Shao family will be doomed. Hee, you guys think it's easy. They won't let us find out the precious of the potion, but in the dragon-slaying operation, as long as Suzy can defeat Shao Kangtian, then maybe we can get what we want from Shao Kangtian's things. The other elders nodded, and they were also a little worried. What they worried about was that the future of the royal family seemed to be dependent on the young deposed Prince Suzy. His Majesty the Emperor also smiled wryly and said, "This time there is indeed a lot of pressure on Shuaner. The Shao family has been preparing for a long time. This time, it is estimated that the preparations are in place. If Shuaner wins, then the Shao family will naturally end, but if Shuaner is defeated, the royal family may really be in a mess." Everyone was silent. They all knew that the future of the royal family might depend on that young man. At the same time, Suzy is still absorbing and breathing. At this time, Suzy's breath began to spin rapidly, forming a huge cyclone unexpectedly. The Dantian of Suzy's body was abolished, but later he used his whole body as the Dantian, and the result was that the absorption speed and strength were greatly enhanced. At this time, the surrounding energy was absorbed by him crazily. Time passed by every minute and every second. Suzy suddenly opened his eyes, and two golden lights burst out from his eyes, which faintly contained a huge sword energy. Late stage of Foundation Establishment. Haha, I have finally entered the cultivation base of late stage of Foundation Establishment. Suzy was also a little unbearably excited at this time. He didn't expect that he would practice here, and his strength would improve so quickly. Dragon Chi, if I display some skills now, it is estimated that even those who have reached the peak of the foundation period may not be able to block their attacks. At this moment, Suzy felt that the jade under his feet had changed. There was a dark passage in the jade, which seemed to lead to the ground, and he was a little curious. Looking at the time, he was going to go down to see what was under here. When he went down the secret passage, he found that the surrounding temperature was getting colder and colder, and that feeling was like piercing into the bone marrow. After less than a stick of incense, he actually felt that his clothes became extremely hard, and his hair stood up like a hedgehog. And in the darkness, he seemed to see an ice dragon swimming around, sending out gusts of chill. He continued to walk down, and after a short while, he still hadn't reached the bottom, but the surrounding temperature was indeed getting colder, and his clothes were all frozen, so they shattered at the slightest touch. Oh my god, what the hell is this place? If it goes down, it will destroy my ice city. Suzy muttered. At this time he didn't dare to go down. When he was about to go up, he suddenly saw a woman. This woman was very beautiful, with a crown on her head. The crown was like an ice sculpture. The woman is sitting cross-legged at the moment, and there is a phantom of white behind him. That phantom of white is like an ice god, emitting icy cold air. Ice spirit, it's actually an ice spirit. Suzy was surprised for a while. He knew that ice spirits are a kind of creatures formed in very cold places. This kind of thing already has a certain IQ. Of course, this thing sometimes controls an area. When Suzy saw that woman, He thought in his heart that this woman was as curious as himself before, but looking at this woman, he felt that he had never seen her before, and this was where his father practiced, so how could there be such a thing? Someone else is here. However, it seemed that the woman was about to be controlled by the ice spirit, and Suzy didn't want the woman to become a murderous weapon. With a wave of his hand, a flying knife shot out, directly aiming at the ice spirit. At this moment, Su Ruoxue is really feeling a little sad. Su Ruoxue is actually the adopted daughter of His Majesty the Emperor, and also the princess of the Great Zhou dynasty. Suzy didn't know Su Ruoxue because Su Ruoxue came here after Suzy was imprisoned. Because of his deep trust of His Majesty the Emperor, His Majesty also let him practice here. As a result, he discovered this secret passage by accident, so he came down to investigate, but he didn't expect Yu Wanghao to meet Bing Ling and be trapped directly. This Bing Ling wanted to control his body. So it was painstaking. Because he was trapped here, even His Majesty the Emperor didn't know. He was desperate, but he didn't expect that at the most critical moment, a person appeared. The next moment he felt a lightness in his body. His whole body was hugged by someone, and then he withdrew several hundred meters away. Suzy, why is it you? You know me, 17. Suzy was a little depressed, and didn't remember that he knew this person. Su Ruoxue was getting old at this time, because he found that he and Suzy were both naked, and they were busy talking about the picture. But at this time, it is obvious that I can't take care of these. The temperature in this ghost is too low. In this kind of place, clothes can be frozen into slag in an instant. But at this time, the gentle-looking Bing Ling suddenly let out a roar, and the next moment it began to change, turning into a very terrifying beast, and rushed towards Suzy directly. He was able to control Su Ruoxue's body immediately, but it took him a long time to control Su Ruoxue's body, but this damned one suddenly came out at the most critical moment, and he was so angry that he was about to smoke of. Suzy was not afraid at all, and the Nirvana sword was drawn out of its sheath in an instant. Report, 94%. Chapter 123, Pill Furnace. On the body of the sword, there was actually a dragon-shaped sword energy surrounding the long sword and making a sound of dragon chant. Void slashed out with a sword, and the huge sword energy formed a real dragon and swept out. The sound of the dragon's roar directly frightened the Bing Liangjun, and they were all prostrate and howling, begging for mercy. Suzy has already mastered the aura of a real dragon, and the dragon is an ancient mythical beast. His aura of prestige is comparable to something as small as Bingling. When this sword chi appeared, that domineering aura instantly stunned Bing Ling, and Bing Ling didn't even have a chance to escape, and was directly destroyed by the real dragon sword chi. Go. The long sword in Suzy's hand returned to the scabbard in an instant, and the real dragon sword energy also returned to his body as a minister. The two of them didn't want to stay here any longer. It was too dangerous. If Suzy hadn't already possessed the spirit of a real dragon, they really wouldn't have dealt with this guy. Su Ruoxue went up first, and Suzy followed behind. At this moment, Suzy suddenly saw a crystal-clear stone near the ice spirit that he killed just now, which seemed to contain a wave of energy. Suzy didn't think much, just grabbed it, and then quickly caught up with him. After Suzy returned to the temple of Wenji, he took out the stones he had obtained before. He always felt that the stones were not simple, and the temperature below them was very low, even below freezing point. It's icy cold, but this stone actually has temperature, and the temperature is even quite high, like a small fireball. Strange, what is this thing? Why is it like this? Suzy looked at the stone, and then took a hammer, ready to break it open. As a result, the hammer was deformed and the thing was not smashed open by 300. In the end, it was pried open with the Nirvana sword. The surrounding stones continued to crack, and suddenly Suzy became excited. Because he actually saw that there was an alchemy furnace inside. Quote, "It's no wonder there is a temperature. It's actually a prehistoric alchemy furnace. Just hearing the name sounds awesome." Looking at this alchemy furnace, he was very excited. This thing seemed to be very powerful. He injected his own true energy into it. The next moment, this thing began to melt a little bit, and finally merged with the true energy. For one, and then entered into his body along the tendons. This thing. Suzy was also shocked in his heart. He really didn't expect this thing to be so weird that it could enter his body. Suzy felt it carefully, and gradually he felt a pill furnace appearing in his natural position. And just now the fingernail-sized alchemy furnace seemed to have become very large. This alchemy furnace was full of simplicity, and he actually began to continuously connect with the tendons of his body. Surrounding this alchemy furnace, there are countless spells. These spell characters and some special formations Suzy have never seen before, and they are too complicated. This alchemy furnace is definitely the most amazing he has ever seen. Alchemy furnace. Moreover, there are clusters of mountains and rivers on the alchemy furnace, and of course there are many figures of monsters. Suzy has never seen such a thing. When watching this scene, Su Luo's whole body was completely shaken. What the hell is this thing? I didn't expect such a good thing to exist. Suzy thought it was incredible at this moment. Suzy still can't see it at this time. Daka, this pill furnace seems to be very complicated and full of very powerful energy. But what Suzy can be sure of is that the pill furnace is in his body, which shows that this thing is actually not simple. After going home to rest for a day, Suzy was ready to meditate and practice. When he was meditating and practicing, he felt a steady stream of breath from his buttocks entering his dantian. Suzy was ecstatic in his heart. At this moment, he could clearly feel that it was caused by the pill furnace in his dantian. The pill furnace rotated rapidly, and this breath could split a force from the earth into his body. He also didn't expect that the alchemy furnace in his dantian could help him absorb and refine his true qi, and now he clearly felt that his cultivation base seemed to have vaguely improved a little bit. At this moment, he could clearly feel that the aura in his dantian was beginning to become very calm. Suzy knew that this was laying the foundation for the state of concentration, and Suzy was ecstatic in his heart. He never thought that the power of the Dan furnace could contain such a terrifying power, strength. At this moment, Suzy leapt out, ready to go out to get some fresh air. At this moment, Suzy saw the sound of fighting not far away, and felt a little curious. Suzy leapt out and soon appeared in the royal garden. At this time, Suzy was a little surprised, because he saw that Su Ruaoshui and the third prince wanted to fight with others. Suzy later found out that Su Ruaoshui was his younger sister, equivalent to his imperial sister. What he didn't expect was that such a thing would happen to a master of their level. Only then did Suzy realize that they were from the Xiao family. At this moment, Su Ruaoshui and the third prince seemed to be rivals. Suzy's face was very gloomy. I really didn't expect that the people of the Xiao family were so arrogant now, and now they dared to come here to make trouble. This royal garden is located in the east of the palace, where the jungle is very dense. In the royal garden, Suzy saw that the two groups had already reached the point where their swords were on the verge of breaking out. Besides Su Ruaoshui and Zhou Jianyan, the other party was actually Zhou Cheng. Suzy didn't expect that this trash would dare to make trouble, so he sneered in his heart. Su Ruaoshui, you'd better hand over this star wood to me, otherwise I will make you miserable. Zhou Cheng said coldly at this time. Suzy saw a piece of star wood in Su Ruazu's hand. Star wood is actually a very uncommon wood, and star wood is actually a very uncommon royal wood. This wood can be used to make bows, and the range is very far. In the Great Zhou dynasty, bows and arrows were very important tools. If the dragon slaying action was imminent, it was very rare to find this kind of star wood. At this moment, there is still a young man beside Zhou Cheng. Suzy knows that this man is called Xiao Kangtian, and Suzy has neither a good relationship with him nor a bad relationship. Has entered the peak strength of the foundation building period, should have broken through and entered the state of concentration, and is actually better at archery. HMPH, do you think it's possible? Su Ruaoshui snorted coldly. Although this star wood is royal wood, there are actually very few royal woods now. He had finally found this Xingqianmu, so how could he give it to Zhou Cheng for nothing? If that's the case, then why are you talking so much nonsense, cousin? Teach him a lesson. Okay, Xiao Kangtian smiled, and then said contemptuously. Princess Ruaoshui, I have given you the opportunity, but since you don't hand it over, then don't blame me for being merciless. At this moment, Xiao Kangtian opened his right hand, grabbed the void, and a hand came out through the air, grabbing at Su Ruaoshui. This guy's cultivation is really not something to brag about. This realm has reached the Dongsheng realm. As expected, the attack is different, and the control of the wind is also quite powerful. After using this move, the wind in the jungle seemed to be driven by him. Su Ruaoshui and Zhou Jianyan joined forces quickly, but they were not his opponents at all. They were blown away after 3 moves, and the two sprayed wildly a mouthful of blood. Tisk tisk. I really didn't expect it to be big. Have your royal family been reduced to this now? What rubbish. Kang Tian also sneered in his heart, then lifted his foot and they kicked it several times, and tied it on Zhou Jianyan's face. Bold, you humiliate us. At this time, Su Ruaoshui was really going to die of anger. She really didn't expect the Xiao family to be so crazy now. Humiliation. Hee hee, it's your luck that you rubbish can be humiliated by me. This Wangyuan garden is where we practiced. Even if I beat you 2 little bastards into disabilities, who do you think will care? Quote. Xiao Kangtian is very domineering. After he finished speaking, the strength of his feet increased a bit. HMPH, even if I die, I won't give it to you. Really? Then I'll let you know how good I am. Xiao Kangtian smiled coldly. Immediately, he kicked Su Ruizu's lower abdomen. This kick was aimed at the Dantian. If it hit, it would directly make them disabled. At this time, the other onlookers screamed, and it would be very troublesome if the matter became serious. However, at this critical moment, a black shadow flashed past, and then with a bang, Xiao Kangtian was seen flying backwards. It was that little bastard who sneaked up on me, so brave. Who are you scolding, little bastard? I'll scold you, little bastard. Xiao Kangtian said it almost subconsciously. Haha, you're so good, you little bastard. It seems that you really have the guts of a bear and a leopard. You really think your Xiao family is very powerful now. Don't you dare to take action against the prince. Why are you going to take action against the prince now? The others were shocked. Only then did they see that it was Suzy. Little bastard, you are finally here, ha ha ha. At this moment Zhou Cheng grinned grimly. It was actually Suzy who caused Zhou Cheng to be reduced to what he is today, and his hatred for Suzy has reached a terrifying level. Zhou Cheng, you are reduced to a waste now, and you are still colluding with the Xiao family to deal with our own people. What do you want to do? Suzy said coldly. HMPH, you little bastard, you really think of you as a prince, how dare you show off in front of me? You bastard sneaked up on me and killed me like this, I will definitely let you die without a place to bury you. Zhou Cheng at this moment is like a mad dog. Report. 94%. Chapter 124. Xiao Kangtian. Heaven, you beat this bastard hard for me, and I will take responsibility if something goes wrong. HMPH, this time I will make him kneel down like a dead dog with me, Prince. If you offend me, you just not as good as pigs and dogs. Xiao Kangtian looked at Suzy with great interest, and said lightly. Don't worry, this bastard actually caused my aunt to enter the sky prison, and I will naturally make his life worse than death. Little bastard, will you kneel with me or I will beat you to your knees? Hee, aren't you guys from the Xiao family all so shy? It seems that you were kicked by Lao Su just now, almost at this time, and King Guangnan's arrow was attacked by you, a despicable villain, right? Hee, it's a pity that the old thief came and rolled around like a lazy donkey, but he avoided it. Suzy sneered and said. Just admit it, and remember, what should be repaid will eventually be repaid. After finishing speaking, Suzy shot almost instantly, even talking nonsense with him, the Nirvana sword flew out with a howl. The aura of the real dragon lingered on the Nirvana sword, and the sound of the dragon's roar was constantly emitted, and the invincible and domineering aura instantly swept out, at that moment. Xiao Kangtian's sneak attack on King Guangnan that day had completely enraged him. Trash, you little bastard, you dare to take action against me, you really are like a mantis, you are beyond your control. The strength of this guy he saw was only at the foundation stage, but he was at the peak of the foundation stage, the gap was not at the same level at all. So Xiao Kangtian wanted to show off his defensive abilities, and unexpectedly released the innate qi. Then, accompanied by a loud bang, when the palms hit each other, Xiao Kangtian's internal organs twitched for a while, and his body retreated more than 10 steps in an instant, the protective energy was directly shattered up. Late stage of foundation establishment. You are actually a late stage of foundation establishment. The power that Suzy erupted just now has obviously reached your cultivation base in the late stage of foundation establishment. This kind of power emperor is really terrifying. In the last martial arts competition, Suzy obviously only had the cultivation base of the early foundation establishment stage, but in just a few days, he reached the cultivation base of the late foundation establishment stage. At this time, Zhou Cheng's face became very ugly. This little beast could defeat him in the early stage of foundation building before, but now he is in the late stage of foundation building. No matter how much he cultivates, he is not his opponent. How did you do it? Hee, Xiao Kangtian, your strength seems to be nothing more than that. I thought you were a genius. Although this guy's strength is much stronger than his own, but he should still be in the early stages of concentration, and his realm is unstable. If he really fights hard, he may not be able to do anything to himself. Little bastard, you really impress me, but if you think this is my strength, then you are too stupid. After finishing speaking, he took the overlord bow from the horse, and with a cry of branches, it became a full moon. Prince, be careful, Su Ruaoshui said hastily. Xiao Kangyu's arrow skills are really not blown out, he has been learning the chasing wind fox arrow. Chasing the wind fox arrow is very terrifying. This type of arrow includes armor-penetrating arrow, whistling arrow and butterfly dance arrow. It is said that with one arrow with all his strength, he can make even a person who has reached the middle stage of concentration not dare to take it easily. Trick. This time Xiao Kangyu actually used the chasing fox arrow to deal with the prince, which is very dangerous. If not careful, Suzy will die. At this time, Suzy also felt the sense of crisis constantly sweeping over, as if being stared at by a cobra. Suzy knew that Xiao Kangyu's swordsmanship was so powerful that even his own uncle almost fell into his hands. At this moment, Suzy held the long sword in his hand, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he continuously released his mental power. Both sides are very tense at this time, because the guys are swallowing their saliva. Xiao Kangtian, it seems that your Xiao family is getting more and more crazy. Just at the moment when the sword was on the verge of breaking out, a voice full of imperial arrogance sounded, like a bomb exploded between the two of them. The overlord bow in Xiao Kanshan's hand was instantly broken, and his body retreated more than 10 steps. Your Majesty, you have come up yourself. Long live my emperor, long live, long live. At this time, everyone else was shocked to the extreme. They didn't expect His Majesty the Emperor to appear. Suzy was also secretly startled, thinking that his father's strength must have reached the state of sitting and forgetting. Suzy is actually very aware of this. The most important thing in deceiving the cultivation on the mainland is that you are divided into several levels. Practicing qi, building foundations, calming the mind, wandering the void, sitting on the dragon bridge and so on. Each realm is mainly divided into the early, middle, late and peak realms. His father seems to have reached the state of Zuo Wang. Zuo Wang should have been transformed into a Dantian to feed the golden elixir, and can have 1,000 years of life. This kind of combat power is actually very rare in this continent. Now he finally knows why the royal family is in decline, but the reason why the Xiao family dare not take action is that they really dare not kiss ye with such a formidable opponent as their own father. Shot. At this time, His Majesty the Emperor slowly walked over, looked at Xiao Kangtian and said indifferently. The royal wraith was originally a place to practice, but you have to have a sense of proportion in everything. Who gave you the courage, Xiao Kangtian, to make you dare to take your broken bow and arrow to my son, the future emperor of the great Zhou dynasty? The voice is calm and the momentum is indeed very majestic. Xiao Kangtian felt like he had eaten shit at this moment. He lowered his head and didn't dare to say a word. Even if he was a young talent, he was still a little tender in the face of such an emperor. Your Majesty the Emperor, this is all a misunderstanding. Children are playing around. This is also young and energetic. Please forgive me. At this moment, an old man in a black robe came over. If he walked over, it would be better to say he floated over, because it was impossible to tell that he was walking. The head of the Xiao family is actually Xiao Tianqin, the head of the Xiao family. At this time, many people couldn't help but almost shouted, this man is not someone else, he is really the most powerful figure in the Xiao family. The strength of this person is estimated to be close to the strength of His Majesty the Emperor. Suzy looked at this old thing, and felt that he was apologizing on the surface, but there is no way to apologize like this. The arrogance on his face is almost written on his face up. HMPH, if it's really a competition, I won't care about it, but let me remind you, if you dare to shoot and kill the prince, it doesn't matter what kind of family genius you are, if you kill and pay for your life, even if it is Tianya Cape, you will be protected by the King of Heaven and Lao Su. No. His Majesty's voice was still unremarkable, but it pressed down like Mount Ai. If Xiao Tianqin hadn't used his aura to protect Xiao Kangtian, Xiao Kang would have peed his pants now. What the emperor said is true. Shooting and killing the prince is indeed a capital crime. The sky is just for fun. Let's not bother, let's go. 0 for flowers. After speaking, Xiao Tianqin led them away. When they were asked to leave, Zhou Cheng's expression turned ugly. His Majesty the Emperor said lightly, Zhou Cheng, you are really my good son. If you can collude with outsiders to kill your big brother today, will you kill me someday too? This, father, the child dare not. Zhou Cheng was so frightened that he was sweating profusely and kowtowed again and again. His body was very embarrassing. The royal family did not please him, and in the Xiao family, he was not actually a member of the Xiao family after all. Well, for the things your mother did, even if he killed his head, he would not be at fault. I originally turned a blind eye to you because you were my son. I didn't expect you to collude with outsiders. Really damn, since you are ruthless to the royal family, and the royal family does not lack you as a child, you can go to the frontier to fend for yourself. His Majesty the Emperor closed his eyes and said calmly. No, father, I know I was wrong, please, I won't go to the frontier. This time Zhou Cheng was so frightened that he couldn't speak fluently. Just kidding, what kind of place is this frontier? But it's a place where birds don't shit, there is nothing, only wind from southeast and northwest. Point 0. However, everyone has to pay for his stupidity, and so does Zhou Cheng. 2 guards dragged him away. Shuaner, are you okay? Thank you, father, for your concern, it's all right. His Majesty the Emperor looked at this son with a look of approval on his face. He did not expect this son's strength to improve so quickly. You come with me. Suzy was curious and followed without any nonsense. Soon came to the main hall. His Majesty asked Suzy to sit down. How much do you know about Xiao Canshan's strength? His Majesty the Emperor actually knew that Suzy was under a lot of pressure now, and that this Xiao Kangtian was indeed a genius. He tried it out just now, and this Xiao Kangwei's strength had actually reached Shu who was at the stage of distraction. Suzy's heart sank. After what happened just now, he knew that if he really wanted to fight this person, he might only be able to survive 30 strokes, and he would lose after 30 strokes. Father, I am not his opponent. It's okay. After all, you have been delayed for 5 years. In fact, Xiao Canshan's most powerful thing is his chasing wind fox sword. Among you juniors, his arrow technique itself is very powerful. In addition, his realm is far beyond your IQ. So it's normal that you don't take advantage of it. His Majesty the Emperor waved his hand, and 3 ancient books appeared in his hands. These are relatively advanced skills, you see what you like. Suzy was extremely excited. He knew that his father was a master of cultivation, and his things would definitely not be rubbish. At this moment, he saw that there was a book on it called Flaming Legs. This kind is suitable for the cultivation of the fire elemental constitution, and the second ice mysterious strength, which is an ice attribute skill. The last one has the vermilion bird arrow on it. Vermilion bird's magic arrow. Is this also archery? Suzy said excitedly. Well, in fact, if you want to compare it with the chasing fox arrow, they are not too far behind. They are both mysterious skills, and the vermilion bird arrow is even more powerful. If you can cultivate the vermilion bird arrow to the late Zochin, to be able to penetrate the city wall, the 100 steelmaking is just like tofu. Of course, this requires a lot of strength for you. Report. 94%. Chapter 125. Lost. Especially in the later stage, it is very difficult to pull away. Suzy was indeed a little ecstatic in his heart. In fact, his whole body is now Huawei's Dantian. All he has is strength. When he cultivates sword drawing skills, it is originally strength that comes first, so he thinks it should not be a problem. Of course, the most important thing is that he wants to fight back with an eye. Isn't Xiao Kangtian very proud of his archery? Suzy thought that if he could suppress it with archery, let's see how he will be so arrogant in the future. Father, I will choose this one. His Majesty the Emperor nodded and said. Well, it's actually pretty good. Thank you, Royal Father. By the way, Royal Father, do you have any more advanced skills? For example, can you have the kind that moves mountains and fills seas and tears the void? Silly boy, you are really thinking too much. Even if our royal family has powerful skills, they can break a mountain at most. As for more powerful skills, they are actually rare, or even non-existent. So it doesn't exist. It can't be said that it doesn't exist. It's just that some of them have been lost. In fact, there were some powerful ones in the past. I remember that there was a mental method of cultivating inner strength in the first emperor. It seemed to be broken and then established. Anyway, I don't know if it is true or not. It's very powerful, but it's a pity that this exercise disappeared later. 3-6 transformations. Break and then stand. Could it be that I practiced it? Suzy muttered. What he practiced was to break the Dantian, and then use his body as the basis for further training for the day. Actually, now that the dynasty has gone downhill, it is already very good to have these. Suzy nodded. In fact, he also knew that the dynasty was in decline, and his father was also very insoluble. In the following half a month, Suzy began to practice the vermilion bird divine arrow. This sword technique is indeed very difficult. Although he is talented and intelligent, he still can't understand it. In desperation, he planned to go to Qinhuangbao Pavilion to find a bow that suits him. Qinhuangbaoge is actually the site of the Zhao family, that is, Zhao Wan's family. Suzy and the Zhao family are no longer in the same relationship as before, so he didn't want to be recognized. We put a piece of dog skin plaster on our face, and then dressed plainly, and then entered the Qinhuangbao Pavilion. The main hall of King Qin Baoge is very mine-like, and the decoration style is also very luxurious. Not only bows are sold in Qinhuangbaoge, but also pills, various weapons and many medicinal materials are also sold. Young man, what do you need? At this time, a little girl said very politely. Ah, do you have a better bow? Yes, young man, please follow me. At this time, Shower brought Suzy to an area dedicated to visiting bows and arrows. Suzy looked at the bow and arrow on it, his eyes were dazzled. There are hundreds of big bows, all kinds of materials, some are inlaid with gems, it is really pretend. Suzy took down a bow, pulled it, and made a buzzing sound. Okay, good officer, Suzy praised. This fair-colored bow and my own vermilion bird Excalibur seem to complement each other. The young man really has a unique vision. This is a vermilion bird bow, which contains the soul power of vermilion bird, so when we pull it away, it can faintly emit red light, and it can easily shoot through stones. The bow is actually very precious. Well, not bad. How much is this? This. Shower was a little embarrassed, Suzy said curiously. Might as well do it. To be honest, this bow has already been given by the young suzerain of the Divine Sword sect before. We still have a lot of young heroes. Excalibur. It's the young lord who claims to have mastered the power of the ice god. Suzy muttered. He knows this guy. His reputation seems to be very powerful. He can be regarded as a master. Shower, is my divine bow ready? At this moment, a hearty voice sounded, and then several maids walked in while throwing flowers. Seeing such a pretend guy, Suzy really didn't want to complain about him, thinking in his heart that you can't pretend die. The person who came in was none other than the young master of the Divine Sword sect. It's ready, let me help you with your salary. As Shower said, he was about to take it from Suzy's hand. At this moment, the young suzerain saw that Suzy was holding his own bow, and suddenly became furious. Bastard, who is this bastard? Is he the only one with Ben's bow and arrow? This guy is really annoying to be arrogant. Of course, in the entire imperial city, he actually has the capital to be arrogant. Suzy frowned. Xindao is really arrogant. I really like this thing. If I give this to you, wouldn't it be too difficult to find a better one? Suzy went up and down a lot, and then said like an old man. Young man, I see that there is an undercurrent between your brows. Your life is not long. If you still want this bow, it will make things worse. Bastard, how dare you curse this young master? This kid is tired of living. Quite a few people were chattering, and at this moment Zhao Wan also came out, looking at Suzy curiously, always feeling infinitely familiar. Little bastard, you dare to curse me, I tell you, if you don't make it clear today, don't blame me for disrespecting the old hunter, you little bastard dare to speak wild words. Hee, the ice soul life god in your palm seems to be very flamboyant, but don't you know that it is actually a life-threatening talisman? You have the god of ice soul. Even in the early stage of cultivation, you can use the god of ice soul to go smoothly and make rapid progress, but you also know that the deeper your cultivation level is, the more the fusion of the god of ice soul and you will become more and more the deeper it gets. You should already be able to feel the cold directly entering the bone marrow, and you should be shivering from the cold. Suzy can actually see that the cold poison in this guy's body is already very serious. In fact, this is also very normal. Everything has advantages and disadvantages. The troubles of the proud son of heaven are like him. In fact, while he has obtained huge benefits, the deed tax of the god of incompatibility is also beginning to have a backlash. But very few people know about this matter. Others think he is awesome. Only he and his father know that this is actually very troublesome. You know the solution. Looking at Suzy, he didn't have the arrogance he had before. In fact, he also knew that this person with the dog skin plaster on his face is really not simple. Yes, this method is actually very simple. Disperse your whole body's cultivation, and you will be fine. You fart. Of course he knows this bad method, but it's like drinking poison to quench thirst. There's no way he can get down. Don't worry, I have a second method. If you can find the red flame stone, and then practice on the red flame stone every day, the red flame element of the red flame stone will enter your body along with your cultivation, so that if so, you will be fine naturally, and it will be of great benefit to your cultivation. Suzy himself doesn't know if this is true. Anyway, nonsense is not illegal. 0. However, the young master seemed to think it made sense, and there was a murmur in his heart. What Senior said is true. I don't know how to call Senior. Hee, you don't have to be polite, Junior. Yun Zhonghe, are just casual people. In fact, I just looked at the bow today, but a gentleman doesn't take away people's love. Since you like it, then I won't force others to be difficult. No, it's really my good fortune for the senior to guide the junior. I will give this bow to you, Junior. The young suzerain said excitedly. He thinks this person is very powerful, so he doesn't want to offend him. Suzy was ecstatic, thinking that this guy has been fooling around for so long. All right, thank you very much. Your father is really good. He gave birth to such a promising son like you. I will go have a drink with your father someday. After saying this, many people were shocked immediately. Many people in the Qin Wangbao pavilion were stunned. Xindao drank with the master of the Excalibur sect. This person seems really not simple. Who the hell is this? The young sovereign's legs were also a little weak, and he hurriedly said submissively. Senior must go there when he is free, and my father will treat him with hospitality. This guy was very excited. He didn't expect to be able to make friends with such a master this time. His father must be very happy to know. Suzy was even more excited. This thing originally cost 80,000 taels. But now there is no need to spend money. Suzy bought the elixir and medicinal materials directly with the saved money, and then quietly left. Qin Wang Baoge was still shocked at this moment. I really didn't expect such a strong person to appear in Qin Wang Baoge. For a long time, an old man said, "Miss, should we follow this strong man and check his whereabouts?" "No, this person has a bad temper. If he gets angry, it will be bad for us." Zhao Wan quickly said that he 4.7 knows that people should not be judged by appearances. Although this person is ugly, it is true that people should not be underestimated. But at this time, the young suzerain's heart was turbulent. If he really hadn't heard of Kai Yensha in this dynasty, could it be something extraterrestrial? But he hadn't even heard of the Yunzhonghe. He wondered if it was some old monster. Reclusive. The more I thought about it, the more I realized it was possible, and I was even happier after being teased, thinking that my father would be very happy when I went back. After Suzy returned to his residence, he took Vermilion Bird out with a bow. He tried to shoot an arrow, and it really was able to penetrate the stone in an instant, and it also had a blasting effect. Suzy was screaming and jumping, which was indeed a good thing. Even if he had reached the peak of the foundation establishment stage, he still had the power to fight. Immediately afterwards, he used the Guyuan pill to improve his own strength. With this elixir, it is much easier to improve his strength. "Little Schwanzi, Miss Ben is back, and you still haven't come to greet her." At this moment, a voice sounded. Suzy channeled the voice. The expression on his face was a little distorted, because he knew who this person was. This is not a good thing. "Shu Yuding, why is this woman here? Shu 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 Yuding, why is this woman here?"